After drinking the milk, the little girl's mother praises her for being such a good child and remarks that she has drunk a lot. She gently explains that she still has work to do, so the little one needs to sleep well while she finishes her chores. Once her mother leaves the room, the female protagonist quietly climbs out of bed and begins crawling across the floor. Her attention is completely fixed on a book resting nearby, and she repeatedly stretches out her tiny hands in an attempt to reach it. After several determined attempts, she finally manages to pull the book toward herself. However, it immediately slips from her grasp and falls directly on top of her. Even so, she calmly begins reading it from beneath its weight. The scene then shifts to several villagers working in the fields. Suddenly, one of them points toward the sky and calls everyone's attention to a flying horse carriage passing overhead. The others immediately conclude that it must belong to a magician traveling through the region. The story then returns to the female protagonist. Her mother finds her once again inside her father's room and gently picks her up, saying that there she is. She mentions that her older brother will be arriving home at any moment and that everyone is finally back. She then tells the family that she will go and serve the meal. One of the young women asks little Safiria if she would like her big sister to carry her, and she happily lifts the child into her arms. Meanwhile, Safiria's brother excitedly tells their mother that he has just seen a horse carriage flying through the sky and that it appeared to be heading toward the castle. The older sister explains that it is most likely a magician returning after completing an errand. She then notices Safiria's obvious fascination and wonders whether the child has become interested in magic. Everyone begins talking enthusiastically, remarking that Safiria is incredibly intelligent and suggesting that perhaps she will grow up to become a magician herself. If that were to happen, she would be summoned to the capital and become affiliated with the nobles. The family becomes increasingly excited by the idea, encouraging one another by saying they should make that dream come true. To them, magicians are truly extraordinary. They possess the ability to wield magic, create fire, summon the wind, and even soar through the skies. Their admiration for such abilities is obvious, especially when they compare them with Ragna, who has no such talents. Not wanting to be left out, Ragna insists that he knows a magician because his father is acquainted with one. However, the others immediately tease him and dismiss his claim as nothing more than a lie. Refusing to back down, Ragna continues, insisting that they even have a magic book in their own house. The very moment the word magic is spoken, Safiria's eyes suddenly widen with intense curiosity. A brief silence follows as everyone freezes in surprise, believing that she has actually spoken. Astonishment spreads throughout the room as they marvel at what they have just witnessed. They begin wondering exactly how many months old she is, because such an early first word seems unbelievable. Marcia quickly picks Safiria up, declaring that the child is a genuine prodigy. However, Safiria's mother reacts with visible frustration because, out of all the words she could have spoken first, her daughter's first word is not "mama." The narration then reveals that this is the female protagonist's second life. She has been reborn in the remote outskirts of the Virgin Empire, in a tiny settlement called Arfi Village, a small community consisting of fewer than 100 people. At home, she lives only with her mother and her older brother. Her father, along with all the other adult men of the village, has been sent away to fight in the ongoing war. In this world, humankind and the demon folk have been locked in relentless conflict for an extremely long time. Despite the existence of magic, the civilization itself resembles that of the Middle Ages, with its villages, castles, and feudal way of life. As expected, common people in this world receive no proper education. As a result, most of them cannot read, write, or even perform basic calculations. However, Safiria is an exception. Through a strange twist of fate, she has retained all the memories from her previous life. In that former life, she worked herself to death, pushing her body beyond its limits until she eventually died from sheer exhaustion. That short and exhausting life came to an end because of her relentless overwork. Having experienced such a miserable fate once already, she has no intention of making the same mistake again in this new life. She understands the harsh reality of this world. If people work endlessly, they lose themselves to reality. However, living in poverty without working is far from satisfying either. To her, the ideal life is to enjoy first-class luxury without having to work endlessly for it. That is the kind of future she desires above all else. She also intends to own a residence in the imperial capital someday. Because of that ambitious goal, she believes she has no time to waste. She must begin putting her life plans into motion as soon as possible. The language spoken in this world is completely different, making her knowledge of Japanese practically useless. Fortunately, she still possesses everything else she learned in her previous life. Mathematics, science, human history, and all the experience she accumulated as a fully employed adult remain preserved within her memories. If she uses the knowledge from her past life wisely, she believes she can steadily climb the ranks of society. Even so, she knows she must be careful about how and when she reveals such knowledge. Unfortunately, her current situation gives her very little freedom. As nothing more than a baby, all she can do is drink milk, cry, sleep, and wet her diapers. If she builds good relationships with the villagers, she can gradually learn about the world through ordinary conversations. However, there is one major obstacle that cannot be ignored. There is no one in this tiny village capable of teaching her how to read or write. Reality proves to be far harsher than she had hoped. With nothing else she can do, she is forced to helplessly watch the days pass by, just as the world has continued to do since the time of their great ancestor. For someone of her age, she is remarkably intelligent. For someone of her age, she can draw exceptionally well. For someone of her age, she possesses an elegant and mature way of thinking. However, she also realizes that there are many capable adults who have already achieved those same qualities. Furthermore, in this world, anyone who reaches the age of 15 is already considered a full-fledged adult. That means merely being impressive for her age is not enough. She must surpass what an ordinary 15-year-old is capable of accomplishing. If she truly wants to achieve that goal, then she cannot afford to be merely talented. She must stand out as an undeniable prodigy from an incredibly young age. At this very moment, Safiria is still only an infant. She has exactly 7 years left to establish herself as a true prodigy. She recalls her previous life. Having finally completed her work, she asks a junior colleague to deliver the finished file to the debugging team. The junior, clearly impressed, remarks that she has resolved the issue with remarkable precision, just as expected from the company's star programmer. He cannot help but wonder how many consecutive days she has remained at the office solely to fix the critical error that had thrown everyone into a state of panic. Deeply grateful for her efforts, he admits that when he first saw the error, he had genuinely felt as though he was about to lose his mind. After finishing her task, the young woman announces that she is going to take a short break. She slowly walks through the office, passing countless exhausted employees lying across the floor. Every single one of them slaves away day and night, endlessly pursued by impossible quotas that never seem to end. Those who finally reach their physical limit collapse from exhaustion, falling asleep either at their desks or directly on the floor. Even after they are awakened, they are expected to immediately resume working as though nothing had happened. It is the ordinary reality of an IT company. At least, the kind of ruthless black company where employees are treated as expendable tools rather than human beings. During her brief break, she receives a call from her mother. When asked about her situation, she casually admits that she is still working 24 hours a day, speaking as though it has become completely normal. Her mother gently scolds her, urging her not to push herself so recklessly. She reminds her daughter to take proper care of her health because she is deeply worried about her well-being. The young woman simply reassures her mother that everything is fine before ending the call. She then returns to her workspace, only to find several senior staff members waiting for her. They address her by name, Natsuki, and begin with the unfortunate announcement that they have disappointing news. After confirming that she had indeed helped the junior resolve the previous problem, they explain that the client has suddenly moved the expected delivery deadline forward, demanding that everything be completed within a single week. The unreasonable demand leaves Natsuki stunned. She immediately recognizes how absurd such a schedule is. However, her superior explains that if the delivery is not completed on time, the company will be unable to receive payment, meaning that none of the employees will even be able to pay their monthly bills. He apologizes for placing such an impossible burden upon everyone before asking the entire team to do their very best to ensure a punctual delivery. Silence fills the room. No one has anything left to say. After all, Natsuki is the one who has built almost everything from the ground up. She shoulders the greatest responsibility, solves every impossible problem, and carries the company on her back. Yet despite all her sacrifices, her relentless dedication ultimately costs her everything. She works herself to death. It is nothing less than death by overwork. The memory fades, and she suddenly opens her eyes in the present. The painful recollection strengthens her resolve. She silently vows that she will never allow herself to meet such a miserable end ever again. Although she still intends to become the very best, she understands that reaching the top will require an enormous amount of self-study. Knowledge is essential, and books are the greatest source of that knowledge. Unfortunately, there is one major obstacle before her. As she looks at the books around her, she realizes that the letters are completely different from the ones she remembers from her previous life. She can recognize them only as unfamiliar symbols and has no way of understanding what they mean. As she continues thinking, an idea suddenly flashes through her mind. She immediately begins searching around the room before picking up a piece of cloth, along with a lump of charcoal. Watching her daughter, her mother calls out to Safiria, reminding her that the charcoal is not a toy to play with. Hearing those words, Safiria can only silently beg her mother for forgiveness as she prepares to put her new idea into action. Under the current circumstances, Safiria realizes that she has no choice but to rely on her greatest advantage. She gazes at her mother with a pair of irresistible puppy eyes. The tactic works instantly. Her mother scoops her into her arms, overwhelmed by how adorable she is. She happily gushes that Safiria is simply too cute and too sweet, making her want to squeeze and spoil her endlessly. After showering her with affection for a while, she finally lets her go. The moment she is free, Safiria resumes her work. One by one, she carefully copies every character exactly as it appears in the book before her. As she continues writing, a question lingers in her mind. Just how many written characters exist in this world? Unfortunately, there is no one around who is capable of teaching her how to read or write. Learning directly from someone would have been the fastest shortcut, but that option simply does not exist. Therefore, her only hope is to decipher the written language on her own. If she can somehow understand the characters in the book, she may eventually learn the language without anyone's help. As she carefully studies the pages, her eyes suddenly widen in surprise. She abruptly realizes something she had completely overlooked. Why is this book written using two entirely different sets of characters? According to what her older brother had once told her, this is the book that was supposedly sent by a sorcerer. It is said to be a genuine grimoire. She is completely certain that this mysterious book contains explanations of the magical spells that exist within this world's system of magic. Completely absorbed by the fascinating discovery, she continues examining the pages. Suddenly, her older brother walks up behind her and snatches the book from her hands. Declaring that it is an extremely important book, he intends to put it away. However, before leaving, his gaze falls upon the sheet where Safiria has been copying the characters. His eyes widen in disbelief. He asks whether she truly wrote all of those characters herself. Meanwhile, Safiria becomes furious. She had been reading what she considers the most interesting page in the entire grimoire, only to have it taken away from her. Still staring at her writing in amazement, her brother asks whether she is actually serious. He wonders if she is trying to become a magician or something. Ignoring his questions, Safiria desperately reaches toward him, tugging at him repeatedly as she tries to snatch the book back. Her brother refuses. He warns her that if she keeps acting like this, he will never forgive her. Even so, Safiria refuses to give up. She continues reaching for the precious book, unwilling to let it go. Growing flustered, her brother suddenly shouts for her to forgive him. Then, without thinking, he pushes her away. Safiria loses her balance and crashes onto the ground. Rather than apologizing, her brother insists that she was being far too persistent and claims that the fall is entirely her own fault. However, the impact is far more painful than she expected. Her entire body aches, and tears immediately fill her eyes. Unable to endure the pain, she bursts into loud cries. A moment later, their mother rushes over and gently comforts her. She reassures Safiria that everything is all right before asking what happened. She wonders whether the two siblings had gotten into another argument. Then she suddenly realizes something. Where has her older son gone? Only half an hour later, the villagers make a shocking discovery. Safiria's older brother has completely disappeared from the village. He has vanished without leaving behind a single trace. The entire village immediately begins searching for him. Everyone calls out to one another, asking whether every corner has been searched. Someone wonders if they have already checked the northern side of the village. Another questions whether he could have somehow left the village grounds without anyone noticing. Even Mr. Vellum joins the search party, yet despite everyone's efforts, not the slightest clue can be found. The villagers grow increasingly anxious. Some mention that groups of thieves have recently been seen roaming through the surrounding area. Others fear something even worse. He is still just a child. What if a monster has already gotten hold of him? Before the panic can spread any further, another villager urges everyone not to jump to such frightening conclusions, reminding them that his family is already overwhelmed with worry. Upon hearing those words, Saphiria's mother collapses to her knees. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, she begins crying uncontrollably. Watching her mother's tearful face, Saphiria is struck by an overwhelming sense of familiarity. It is the unmistakable expression of a mother desperately worrying for her missing child. She cannot help wondering where her older brother could possibly have gone. Then guilt begins consuming her. She realizes that it was her own greed for the grimoire that pushed a 5-year-old boy into making such a reckless decision. Believing herself to be responsible, she concludes that there is no longer any other option. She quietly climbs down from her mother's arms before stepping forward to stand in front of everyone. The sudden action leaves every single person in the village staring at her in complete shock. Everyone is left astonished when Saphiria actually manages to stand on her feet. However, the moment she rises, her strength immediately gives out, and she collapses back onto the ground. Refusing to give up, she begins crawling forward and urges everyone to scatter in different directions to continue searching. After a moment, she finally speaks again and asks where her big brother usually goes whenever he disappears. Her mother explains that she has already checked the places she could think of, but Ragna was not there either. Upon hearing that, Saphiria questions whether anyone has searched the houses of his friends. She reasons that her big brother might be hiding at one of his friends' homes. Although adults may not realize it, children can be surprisingly perceptive and understanding, so he may have asked his friends to keep his whereabouts a secret. The possibility immediately dawns on everyone, and they decide that every house in the village must be searched once again. While her mother remains astonished by the mature and logical manner in which Saphiria is speaking, Saphiria mentions one more possibility. She asks whether there is any place that her big brother used to visit together with their father. She explains that he has probably gone somewhere filled with memories of his father rather than simply hiding. At those words, her mother's expression changes as she realizes that she may actually know where Ragna could be. She announces that she is going outside the village for a short while and asks everyone else to stay behind and take care of Saphiria until she returns. However, Saphiria insists on accompanying her instead of remaining behind. Marcy also decides to go with them, pointing out that they should hurry before the sun sets. The three of them immediately head toward the destination. As they travel, Saphiria's mother explains that there is an old cemetery ahead of them. Ever since monsters began roaming the surrounding area, no one has been able to safely visit the place anymore. Before leaving for the war, her husband and one of his closest friends had visited that cemetery together, where the friend's grave is located. It was also the place where they had made a solemn promise and sworn a vow to one another. She wonders whether Ragna had run away to that place because he was thinking about his father and wanted to be close to the memories they had shared there. Meanwhile, Saphiria remains deep in thought. She cannot understand why her big brother is so determined not to become a sorcerer. She wonders whether he is simply being stubborn, but that explanation does not satisfy her. Instead, she recalls that he had once said their father would never allow her to become a sorcerer. That statement makes her question whether becoming a sorcerer carries some kind of danger. In other words, there must be a price to pay in exchange for gaining the ability to use magic. If someone possesses magical talent, they will inevitably be recruited and sent off to war. Even so, another question arises in her mind. To begin with, what exactly is magic? She realizes that she knows absolutely nothing about it. In this world, she is still only a baby, making it impossible for her to understand such things on her own. However, if her assumptions are correct, then her big brother must have taken the magic book away from her because he was genuinely worried about her safety rather than trying to upset her. Before long, the three of them finally reach the cemetery. There, they discover Ragna sitting alone at the edge of a cliff. The moment his mother sees him, she rushes over and embraces him tightly, overwhelmed with relief after finding him safe at last. She cannot help thinking about how worried everyone had been and how the entire village had been searching tirelessly for him. Ragna turns towards Saphiria and explains that if she becomes a magician, the king will eventually take her away to fight in the war. She will be forced onto the battlefield whether she wants to or not, and he cannot understand why she does not realize the danger behind becoming a sorcerer. Hearing those words, their mother realizes the true reason behind Ragna's actions and questions whether he has been trying to prevent such a fate from befalling Saphiria. Ragna admits that he has never forgotten the conversation he once had with their father at this very place. He recalls bringing a book containing magical spells to his father and excitedly telling him that he intended to study it, become a magician, follow him into battle, and fight by his side. His father had smiled proudly at his determination and told him that his dream was admirable, but there would be no need for him to become a magician. He had confidently declared that the war would come to an end before both of his children had grown up. He promised that he would do everything in his power to end the war himself and return safely to the village. Because of that, he wanted Ragna to grow into a strong and kind man who would remain behind to protect his mother and safeguard the babies who would one day be born in the village. Their mother is deeply moved upon hearing this story and asks whether Ragna had truly made such an important promise with his father. Ragna lowers his head and insists that he is the one who failed to keep that promise. Even after making that vow, he continued trying to study the magical book. Just like anyone who struggles to stay awake while studying, he repeatedly found himself unable to make progress. He attempted to read it over and over again, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not understand a single thing written inside it. Yet Safiria had been able to comprehend it with ease. Unable to hold back her emotions any longer, their mother embraces Ragna tightly and asks for his forgiveness. However, Ragna believes that he is the one who should apologize instead. Accepting his own shortcomings, he hands the magical book over to Safiria. Safiria gratefully accepts it and silently thanks her big brother. Afterward, the four of them return safely to the village. The moment the villagers see them, they rush forward with expressions of relief and happiness, warmly embracing them after the frightening search. Now that Safiria understands the true nature of the book, she realizes that it is not an ordinary book at all, but a genuine grimoire containing magical knowledge. Even so, she decides not to rush into deciphering its contents any further. Even if she successfully manages to decode every spell inside, she has no way of knowing whether she is actually capable of casting magic. She calmly considers the risks involved. In the worst possible situation, entering a battlefield with incomplete understanding and half-mastered magic would only lead to disaster. Such inexperienced magic could even be exploited as a reckless tactic by commanders, sending newcomers with little knowledge of magic into suicidal attacks, simply to disrupt the enemy's formations or temporarily change the flow of battle. Thinking about such a horrifying possibility, she immediately dismisses the idea, deciding that she wants absolutely no part in such foolishness. She becomes convinced that this must have been exactly why her father made that promise to Ragna. Without a doubt, he never wished for his own children to march towards certain death on the battlefield. Although she has never even seen her father's face, everything she has learned about him makes him seem like an exceptionally gentle, honorable, and compassionate man. As those thoughts fill her mind, sleep gradually overtakes her. Before drifting off completely, she reflects that perhaps living as a baby is not such a bad thing after all. Being surrounded by a warm and loving family that protects and cherishes her is a comforting feeling she had never truly experienced before. Sometime later, she begins noticing that the villagers have started referring to her as the brave hero whenever they look at her. One villager eagerly wonders whether she would like to eat some manju, while another immediately scolds the suggestion, pointing out that she is still busy reading and should not be disturbed. The villagers continue praising her extraordinary abilities. They marvel at the fact that she is only 6 months old, yet she can already stand on her own feet and speak fluently. They rarely ever see her cry or complain despite her age. On top of that, she spends every single day reading the magical grimoire from beginning to end. To them, such unbelievable talent can only belong to a true prodigy. Before long, the rumors grow even more exaggerated. The villagers become convinced that she must actually be the reincarnation of the legendary brave hero himself. Without realizing it, they completely misunderstand the truth and wholeheartedly believe that a new hero has been born within their humble village. The scene then shifts as a knight riding on horseback arrives at the entrance of the village and asks whether this is Alhi village. Marcy confirms that it is indeed the correct place. The newcomer is revealed to be a female knight. She politely introduces herself as Narguria, a knight serving the Church of Inn, and explains that she has come to the village for a single purpose: to seek out and speak with the brave hero. Narguria sits at the table, trying to eat her meal, yet her entire body trembles uncontrollably. In reality, it is not her body, but the armor she is wearing that shakes with every slight movement. Safiria's mother apologizes sincerely, explaining that she is sorry this is all they are able to serve. Narguria immediately responds with deep humility, insisting that the meal is already far more than she deserves. She expresses that the food is incredibly delicious and that she feels unworthy of receiving such precious ingredients. She lowers herself even further by apologizing, believing that someone as insignificant as her should not be treated with such kindness. Meanwhile, Safiria quietly observes everything around her. She realizes that a visitor has arrived in their village and identifies the guest as a knight from the Empire. Under normal circumstances, such distinguished visitors always stay at the village elder's house. However, since the elder has recently fallen ill, it has instead been decided that the knight will stay with Safiria's family. From Safiria's perspective, this unexpected arrangement provides the perfect opportunity to secretly observe the mysterious visitor. Although she wears the innocent expression of an ordinary baby, Safiria carefully watches Narguria without revealing her true intentions. Day after day, she silently studies the knight's every action. Every morning and every evening, Narguria diligently patrols the entire village. Whenever she notices a villager struggling, she immediately lends a helping hand. She cuts overgrown grass, carries heavy buckets of water, assists anyone who requires support, and even spends time playing with the local children. As evening arrives, she once again resumes her inspection of the village, making sure everything remains peaceful and secure. Watching this routine leaves Safiria genuinely puzzled. She cannot help wondering just how incredibly diligent a single person can be. At the same time, she finds the entire situation rather suspicious. It seems strange that the Empire would dispatch only one knight to capture a group of thieves. Perhaps Narguria has actually been sent to investigate the rumors surrounding the strange little girl who is capable of reading a magical book. Another possibility is that the Empire has ordered her to confirm the rumors claiming that a future hero resides within this village. However, Safiria reflects that whether someone dies fighting for the Empire or simply works themselves to death through endless labor, the final outcome is practically no different. Even so, she realizes that Narguria's true objective may be something entirely different. Rather than jumping to conclusions, she decides to continue observing the situation for the time being. At that very moment, Marcia is called away because someone asks for her assistance outside. Before leaving, she politely asks Narguria if she could watch over Safiria for a little while. Narguria hesitates immediately, admitting that she has absolutely no experience taking care of small children and does not know how to handle them properly. Nevertheless, Marcia reassures her by explaining that Safiria is not exactly a normal child, so everything will most likely be perfectly fine. Once the two adults leave, only Safiria and Narguria remain together inside the house. Safiria approaches the knight and reaches out, wanting to be embraced. Narguria becomes visibly flustered and nervously explains that she has never held a child before and is uncertain whether she can do it correctly. The moment Safiria begins crying, however, Narguria immediately panics. Unable to endure the child's tears any longer, she apologizes, admits defeat, and gently removes her heavy armor before carefully wrapping her arms around Safiria in a warm embrace. As Safiria rests against Narguria's chest, she unexpectedly notices something unusual. Although Narguria is hugging her, the knight herself continues to cry quietly. Several days pass after that encounter, and during that time, Safiria gradually begins to understand the true reason behind those tears. One day, Safiria gently asks Narguria whether everything is truly all right. Narguria finally reveals the painful truth that she has been exiled from the knighthood. She confesses that even in the past, she had failed to defeat a demon. In a family where generation after generation had proudly served as knights, she could not accomplish even the most basic expectations placed upon her. She admits that she has never been able to slay a single demon, nor could she even bring herself to kill an ordinary chicken. Because of those failures, she sincerely believes that she is completely useless. Safiria finally understands the real reason why big sister Narguria has been sent to this remote village to deal with a handful of thieves. If she were to compare the situation with the corporate world from her previous life, it would be no different from a useless employee being demoted and transferred to the lowest position on the company's ladder. At that point, it no longer matters whether Narguria has truly been assigned to capture thieves or not. In the end, she has simply been sent away because everyone else considers her nothing more than excess baggage. Feeling sympathy for the knight, Safiria gently pats Narguria in an attempt to comfort her, silently wishing that she would not be so sad. She begins thinking about what it truly means to be a knight. A knight's duty is to protect the innocent, yet if someone is incapable of taking another person's life, does that really make them unworthy of protecting others? Safiria reflects that ordinary people themselves struggle to take the lives of birds or animals because they value every living creature. To her, Narguria possesses an exceptionally pure and compassionate heart. Rather than seeing that kindness as a weakness, Safiria admires it deeply. She sincerely hopes that one day she can grow into someone just like Narguria, a strong yet gentle knight who protects everyone without abandoning her compassion. Those heartfelt thoughts bring a warm smile to Narguria's face. She tells Safiria that she truly is a hero. During her pursuit of the thieves, she had heard rumors that a remarkably brave hero lived in a certain village. When she discovered that the legendary hero was actually such a young child, she was genuinely astonished. Even so, she considers it an honor to have met Safiria in person. From that moment onward, she silently resolves that she will protect Safiria with every ounce of strength she possesses. Now that Safiria is convinced Narguria harbors no malicious intentions whatsoever, she once again returns her attention to deciphering the mysterious grimoire. Since Narguria is capable of reading, her assistance allows Safiria to understand more and more of the strange letters written throughout the ancient book. Even so, one major obstacle still remains. The magical spells themselves are written in an ancient language that is extremely difficult to interpret. In order to overcome that challenge, Safiria begins separating each section of the text into smaller parts, carefully breaking down every symbol and phrase to make the contents easier to analyze. She organizes everything in a way that allows her to understand it visually. As she continues working, however, an unexpected feeling washes over her. The entire process feels strangely familiar, almost as though she has experienced it before. A powerful sense of déjà vu overwhelms her, making her feel as though she has seen something exactly like this during her previous life. Suddenly, realization strikes her all at once. She lets out an excited shout, immediately catching Rogan's attention. He eagerly asks whether she has finally managed to read the grimoire. Safiria excitedly realizes that the definitions function as values, while the symbols themselves act as variables. The formulas substitute different elements into one another, making the entire system remarkably similar to writing source code for computer programming. At that very moment, she finally succeeds in decoding the spell. Rogan stares at her in complete disbelief. Both he and the others find it almost impossible to believe that she has actually deciphered an ancient magical text. However, another question immediately comes to Safiria's mind. Even if she has managed to decode the spell itself, she still has no idea how to activate it. Rogan explains that the process is actually very simple. According to what he once witnessed, a magician only needs to repeatedly recite the magical spell several times for it to activate. He remembers seeing someone perform magic in exactly that manner before. Even after hearing that explanation, Safiria remains unconvinced. She realizes that she does not even know how the spell is supposed to be recited. She wonders whether some special tool or unique magical skill is also required for the activation process. Hoping for more information, she asks Rogan to think carefully and remember every detail he witnessed. At that very moment, Narguria suddenly recalls something she once saw while visiting the capital. She remembers witnessing a magician cast a spell by saying the words, "aerial shot." Perhaps, she suggests, those words were actually the spell's activation name. Merely by speaking that name aloud, the magician had unleashed an incredibly powerful blast of wind. That clue immediately sparks another idea in Safiria's mind. She begins wondering whether every spell possesses a specific activation word hidden somewhere within its formula. Perhaps all she has to do is discover the correct keyword herself. Her eyes slowly scan across the ancient writing until they finally stop on a single word that instantly captures her attention. Without hesitation, she softly speaks the word wind. The moment the word leaves her lips, an enormous burst of magical energy erupts around her. A violent blast of wind explodes outward, proving that the spell has truly activated. On that unforgettable day, Safiria officially becomes a sorcerer. Safiria is not simply taking a bath. She feels as though she is in heaven at that very moment. However, it is not as though she is lazily relaxing without purpose. Even while soaking in the warm water, she is diligently practicing the magical spells she has been learning. When she first succeeds in activating a spell, air gathers above the palm of her hand before erupting into a powerful burst of wind. This time, however, instead of producing wind, she attempts to create water. Her efforts are successful, and she manages to fill the entire bathtub with water through magic alone. Unlike before, she is now able to control the spell properly, all thanks to a technique she has recently mastered, known as the trajectory designator. Previously, whenever she attempted to cast water or fire magic, the spells would scatter uncontrollably in every direction, turning them into dangerous, kamikaze-like attacks that could not be guided. Fortunately for her, she discovers a spell within the magic book specifically designed to prevent such troublesome situations. That spell is the Trajectory Designator. The technique works by combining the user's mana with the direction indicated by both the caster's hands and head. By default, the directional values range from 0, 0 to 359, 359. After learning the Trajectory Designator, Safiria greatly improves her accuracy, allowing her to guide her spells with stable and reliable precision instead of letting them fly wildly out of control. There is one more issue she has to solve. The water she summons through magic is not warm by default. Because of that, she initially spends time practicing a cooling spell and experimenting with temperature-related magic. As she continues studying, she eventually discovers another spell capable of altering the nature of mana itself. By utilizing this technique, she becomes able to freely adjust the temperature of the water she creates. Through the proper incantation, she finally understands how to change the temperature with ease, allowing her to prepare a perfectly comfortable bath entirely through magic. After finishing her bath, Safiria climbs out of the tub and goes to ask her mother where her clothes are. Her mother explains that they have already been washed and tells her to wait for a moment while she brings something else for her to wear. Soon afterward, Safiria changes into a long dress. The moment everyone sees her, they immediately agree that it suits her wonderfully and that she looks absolutely adorable wearing it. Her mother becomes so delighted by the sight that she declares she will have Safiria call her mommy from that day onward. Safiria finds the idea unbearably embarrassing, yet her mother's excitement only grows stronger. Overcome with affection, she happily hugs Safiria and lovingly declares that she is her little angel. Watching the heartwarming scene, Rogan turns toward Marianne, hoping she might somehow put a stop to his mother's overwhelming enthusiasm. Marianne simply smiles and remarks that she supposes Rogan inherited his appearance from his father, while Safiria clearly takes after Marcia. She then adds that Rogan will undoubtedly grow into an even more handsome young man, just like his father. Moments later, however, she pauses and wonders whether Rogan actually resembles her as well. Rogan immediately rejects the idea in complete embarrassment, insisting that there is absolutely no resemblance whatsoever. Unfortunately for him, he has no opportunity to escape. With no other choice, he also ends up being dressed in a gown, leaving him thoroughly humiliated as he silently questions why such a thing has happened to him. At that exact moment, Rogan notices his friend arriving. She reveals that this is the reason they had asked to borrow her dress earlier, although she had originally believed it was meant for Safiria. Realizing the awkward situation, she immediately attempts to leave as quickly as possible, while Rogan desperately tries to stop her before she can escape. As the days continue to pass, spending every moment surrounded by her loving family feels like a blessing beyond compare to the lonely life she once lived. Although she still encounters occasional difficulties, she sincerely wishes that these peaceful and carefree days could continue forever. Sadly, she is still far too naive to believe that such happiness can remain unchanged indefinitely. One night, while Safiria is peacefully asleep, her eyes suddenly snap open. The instant she awakens, she is met with a horrifying sight. A strange man has broken into their house, and he has already stabbed her mother in the back. Rogan immediately rushes toward their mother in panic. Meanwhile, the intruder casually wonders whether he has actually killed the strange woman. Rather than feeling any remorse, he finds the entire situation amusing and thinks that the chaos itself is entertaining. As Rogan attempts to stop him, the man effortlessly kicks him away with overwhelming force. At that same moment, Safiria rushes toward her mother in shock. Before she can do anything, the intruder grabs hold of her and questions where she suddenly came from. Safiria can only wonder why something like this is happening. Without another thought, the man violently throws her aside as well, mocking the hateful glare she gives him and declaring that she should die too. The impact leaves Safiria unconscious for a brief moment. Even then, despite her own injuries, their mother desperately clings to the man's leg, pleading with him not to lay a hand on her children. The bandit responds by beginning to tear apart her clothes, an act that fills Safiria with overwhelming despair. At that moment, Safiria blames everything on herself. Even after being reincarnated into this world, even after spending so much time learning magic, she still finds herself powerless against a mere bandit. The painful realization crushes her heart. However, she immediately rejects that thought. This is no longer her previous life. In this world, she possesses the strength to fight back. Summoning every ounce of determination she has, Safiria activates Bloodlust. In an instant, blood gathers before the palm of her hand, aligning itself perfectly in the intended direction. Without hesitation, she releases the spell, launching it directly toward the bandit. She immediately follows with another technique, Bloodshot. By compressing the blood to its absolute limit, the projectile becomes capable of piercing through its target like a concentrated laser beam. She continues unleashing one attack after another, relentlessly striking the bandit without allowing him any opportunity to recover. Eventually, she reaches the fallen dagger and picks it up. Consumed by rage and the desire to protect her family, she prepares to end the man's life herself. Before she can deliver the final blow, Rogan rushes in from behind and firmly restrains her. He refuses to let her continue, insisting that it is enough. He desperately tries to calm her, assuring her that she can stop now and that everything will be all right. At that very moment, Marianne arrives at the scene. The instant she understands what has happened, she immediately checks whether everyone is safe before rushing to Marcia's side. Marcia weakly calls out to her, and Marianne quickly reassures her that everything is going to be all right. Rogan urgently explains that Marcia has been stabbed in the back and that they need to stop the bleeding immediately. Marianne immediately begins giving instructions. She tells Safiria and Rogan to help her carefully turn Marcia over as gently as possible. Afterward, she orders Rogan to fetch a clean piece of cloth and press it firmly against the wound to slow the bleeding. Even as she works, Marianne realizes how critical the situation truly is. If only Bilarm were present, he would be far more capable of treating such severe injuries. Determined to save her mother, Safiria immediately declares that she will go and find him. Marianne instantly refuses, warning her not to leave the house because bandits are still fighting throughout the main square, where Narguria is currently engaged in battle against them. Despite the danger, Safiria insists that she still has to find help. Before she can force herself forward, Rogan grabs hold of her and refuses to let her go. She repeatedly struggles, demanding that he release her, but Rogan firmly refuses. He points out that, in her current condition, she cannot possibly crawl all the way there on her own. Instead, he kneels in front of her and tells her to climb onto his back. Turning to Marianne, he entrusts their mother's care entirely to her. With no more time to waste, Rogan carries Safiria on his back, and together the two of them dash toward Narguria, desperately hoping to find help before it is too late. Safiria lies asleep, restless, as Rogan suddenly wakes beside her. Turning toward their mother, he quietly remarks that Safiria is having another nightmare. He notices that she is once again mumbling about some kind of syntax error, words that make little sense to him. Without hesitation, Rogan walks over to her, gently pats her, and reassures her that everything is all right. In response, Safiria instinctively reaches out and holds his hand, and with that small gesture, the two of them peacefully drift back to sleep. Their mother quietly approaches and smiles as she watches the scene before her. She remarks that Rogan has managed to calm Safiria down once again, just as expected of an older brother. She tells him that he must continue protecting his little sister in the future as well. However, Rogan humbly replies that he is nowhere near as strong as their father, nor can he use magic like Safiria. Their mother gently shakes her head and tells him that none of those things matter. She explains that simply doing what he has just done, being there for his sister when she needs him, is more than enough. The memory fades, bringing the story back to the present. Rogan tells Safiria that they are almost at the town square. He also informs her that Narguria and the village chief should already be there waiting. However, Safiria remains deeply troubled. She wonders whether everyone is truly safe. She blames herself for what happened, admitting inwardly that she nearly gave in to murderous intent. For a brief moment, she genuinely wanted to use her magic not merely to fight, but to kill. Noticing the guilt weighing heavily on her, Rogan reassures his sister. He reminds her that those bandits are incredibly dangerous opponents, explaining that the very fact the enemy is still alive proves just how resilient and powerful he is. Rogan tells her that she should not burden herself over injuring someone like that. Instead, he reminds her that she is the hero who stepped forward and protected their mother when it mattered most. Hearing those words, Safiria quietly acknowledges them before sincerely thanking her brother. The siblings finally arrive at the battlefield, where they are immediately met with a grim sight. Narguria is locked in combat against the strange old bandit leader, desperately attempting to strike him down with her sword. Despite her determined attacks, the old man calmly criticizes her, declaring that although she is a skilled swordswoman, she lacks the combat experience necessary to defeat him. Without giving her an opportunity to recover, the bandit leader launches a brutal counterattack. He strikes Narguria with overwhelming force before forcefully knocking her to the ground and pinning her beneath his foot. While overpowering her, he loudly declares that she simply does not possess the resolve required to kill him. The surrounding bandits burst into laughter and cheer as they watch the one-sided battle unfold, proudly boasting that such dominance is exactly what they expect from their leader. At that moment, the village chief glances back and notices Rogan and Safiria arriving at the scene. Rogan immediately asks him what is happening. The village chief explains that the bandits launched an attack on the village during the night. Fortunately, Narguria was standing watch and managed to warn everyone in time, allowing the majority of the villagers to escape to safety before the bandits could reach them. Safiria anxiously asks about Narguria's condition. The village chief explains that, in order to buy enough time for the elderly villagers, whose weak bodies prevented them from fleeing quickly, Narguria deliberately challenged the bandit leader to a duel. During the fierce confrontation, Narguria's head armor is knocked off, exposing her face. The bandit leader immediately stares at her and loudly remarks that she is quite a beautiful woman. His subordinates eagerly urge him to finish her off quickly, admitting that they are already growing impatient. However, the leader casually tells his men not to rush. He comments that he cannot understand why a woman like her is living in such a remote countryside, assuming that she must have fled because she dislikes high-ranking nobles. He then turns his attention back to Narguria and proposes a cruel bargain. He declares that if she manages to win the duel, he will spare the elderly villagers. However, he follows the offer with a sinister condition, announcing that before anything else, he intends to have plenty of fun with her. Safiria witnesses everything unfolding before her, and immediately tells the village chief to return and look after her mother. The village chief quickly asks whether Marcia has been injured. However, Safiria offers no reply. Instead, she silently steps forward, causing everyone present to stare at her in confusion, wondering what exactly she is planning to do. She calmly declares that the rest of the battle should be left to the hero. With those words, she confidently walks toward one of the bandits. The man looks at her in disbelief, wondering where such a small child has suddenly come from. He casually questions whether her mother has already been killed. Before he can react any further, Safiria delivers a solid punch that sends him crashing to the ground. As he struggles to stand, he suddenly realizes that his feet are beginning to freeze. Within moments, the ice rapidly spreads across his body until he is completely encased in frost. Terrified, he desperately cries out for help. Rather than helping him, the surrounding bandits burst into laughter, mocking him and asking what on earth he is even doing. Without paying any attention to them, Safiria calmly approaches another group of bandits and extends her hand toward them. The men stare at her hand in confusion, noticing nothing more than a handful of ordinary sand. They dismiss it without concern, believing it to be harmless. However, Safiria immediately activates her magic, causing the sand to become a deadly weapon that overwhelms them and sends them collapsing to the ground. As she continues fighting, she reflects that her previous life had never seemed particularly useful. Yet her mind remains filled with countless lines of source code, so many that they are enough to haunt her nightmares. The programming knowledge she spent her entire previous life studying and working with, until the day she died, has now become the foundation of something entirely different. Using that knowledge, she has altered a magical incantation into a completely new form, allowing an overwhelming amount of magic to overflow from her body. The surrounding bandits immediately panic and begin shouting for everyone to get away from her. They scream that the child is holding something as dangerous as gunpowder. Watching their frightened reactions, Safiria realizes that they instinctively understand the danger of confronting a magician and are trying to keep their distance. Without hesitation, she unleashes a devastating spell known as Crazy Mana Storm. Violent winds erupt across the battlefield, carrying blazing flames that sweep through the bandits with terrifying force. The combined power of wind and fire reduces them to ashes, scattering what remains like dust across the battlefield. The surviving bandits desperately growl, scream, and flee in every direction, hoping to escape. However, Safiria immediately follows up with another spell, launching powerful wind spears that intercept the fleeing enemies and bring their escape to an abrupt end. Within moments, every bandit has been eliminated. Only the old bandit leader remains. Enraged by the destruction of his entire group, the leader immediately redirects his fury toward Narguria and launches another attack. Narguria firmly declares that she is his opponent. However, the leader angrily shouts that insignificant prey should stay out of his way. At that very moment, Safiria calmly calls out to Narguria, telling her that it is finally all right to become serious. Receiving those words, Narguria immediately changes her stance and launches her attack without hesitation. Until now, she had deliberately restrained herself. She had feared that fighting with the full extent of her abilities would reveal movements completely different from those she normally displayed during training. More importantly, even if she had easily defeated the leader from the beginning, his subordinates would still have been free to rampage through the village and slaughter the innocent villagers. For that reason, she intentionally put on a convincing performance, drawing the attention of every bandit toward herself while patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity. Now that Safiria has eliminated the remaining enemies, that opportunity has finally arrived. Narguria delivers a single decisive strike. The blow lands cleanly. The bandit leader collapses to the ground, utterly defeated. The battle finally comes to an end. Overjoyed by their hard-earned victory, both Narguria and Safiria smile brightly before rushing toward one another and embracing in a heartfelt hug. After all, unwavering trust and perfect teamwork always emerge victorious in the end. Safiria expresses immense relief upon seeing that Narguria is safe. In response, Narguria sincerely apologizes for being unable to provide any assistance to her during the battle. However, Safiria immediately reassures her that there is nothing to apologize for, explaining that everything turned out well because of Narguria's efforts. At that very moment, the leader suddenly regains consciousness and rises once again, attempting to launch another attack against them. Reacting instantly, Narguria steps in front of Safiria, raises her sword defensively to shield them both, and anxiously checks whether Safiria is unharmed. Without wasting a second, Safiria activates her flash magic. The brilliant burst of magic forces the leader backward, causing him to lose his balance. Nevertheless, he stubbornly charges forward once more, swinging his weapon in another desperate attempt to strike them. Realizing that she must continue supporting the fight, Safiria decides to assist Narguria directly. She casts enhancement magic that dramatically increases Narguria's speed. Empowered by the spell, Narguria dashes toward the bandit leader at incredible velocity and delivers a decisive strike that finally brings his life to an end. Once the battle is truly over, Narguria expresses her heartfelt gratitude to Safiria. She admits that without Safiria's support, she would most likely have lost the battle and even been killed. Those words leave Narguria visibly emotional. Safiria gently reassures her that she would never think any less of her because of something like that. After all, Narguria is her sister, and nothing could ever change that. Those heartfelt words bring a warm smile to Narguria's face. With the danger finally over, the entire village erupts into applause. The villagers enthusiastically praise the hero for successfully eliminating all of the thieves. Cheers echo throughout the village, as everyone excitedly proclaims that the brave hero has been reborn. They also loudly celebrate Safiria, acknowledging her remarkable contribution alongside the hero. However, in the midst of the celebration, Safiria suddenly begins to feel extremely dizzy. Before she can collapse to the ground, Narguria quickly catches her and supports her in her arms, becoming deeply concerned for her condition. The exhaustion finally catches up to Safiria. Staying awake throughout the entire night has completely drained her strength. She has continuously cast one spell after another without giving any thought to the consequences. Since every use of magic demands a price, her body can no longer endure the overwhelming strain. Having pushed herself far beyond her limits, she simply allows herself to lose consciousness. The scene then shifts to the aftermath of the battle, where the villagers work together to repair the extensive damage inflicted upon their village. Everyone is busy rebuilding homes and restoring what had been destroyed. During this time, attention is drawn to a letter. The scene then transitions elsewhere, where an elderly man respectfully approaches his lord and delivers an important report. Upon hearing that a baby who is not even a year old has used magic to drive away an entire group of bandits, the lord repeats the astonishing information in disbelief. The elderly man then observes that his lord appears to be in an unusually good mood after hearing such extraordinary news. The lord remarks that the report before him is not some fictional novel, but an official document submitted by the military research team. He questions whether Koyayaku truly wrote the application himself. The elderly man confirms that it is indeed genuine. However, he comments that the document resembles a threatening letter far more than a formal petition. Even so, the Lord considers that to be a good sign. He declares that he will personally meet the individuals involved and instructs his subordinate to make the necessary arrangements. Nearby, another individual lets out a laugh and wonders whether the Lord has become interested in the child as well. He questions whether the Lord truly intends to arrange a meeting between the baby and the four. He remarks that possessing excessive power from such a young age could become a serious problem. The Lord calmly explains that this is precisely why he wishes to witness everything with his own eyes. According to the legends preserved by the AIN Church, the situation cannot simply be ignored. Furthermore, he considers himself a realist who believes in confirming extraordinary matters personally, rather than relying solely on reports. The scene then shifts to the imperial city of Bioland, the largest nation on the continent and the capital of the empire. Inside a carriage, Rogan and Safiria admire the magnificent scenery around them. They are amazed by the grandeur of the capital and quietly take in their surroundings. Once they have finished visiting their mother at the imperial hospital, they are scheduled to continue their journey to Bioland Castle. Meanwhile, Narguria gently asks Marcia about her condition and whether she is feeling any better. Marcia reassures her that she is recovering well thanks to everyone's care. Following the previous bandit attack, the Empire dispatches an investigation team to the village in response to the reports they receive. After carefully examining the evidence and confirming the truth behind the incident, the Empire decides to summon Safiria to the capital. She is requested to personally explain every detail regarding the battle against the bandits. More importantly, she is expected to give a full account of the magic she used during the encounter. In the first place, magicians are extremely rare in this world. Because of that, the authorities cannot simply overlook a baby displaying such extraordinary magical abilities in a remote village. Safiria reflects upon everything that happened. She had only wanted to suppress the thieves while allowing Narguria to receive the recognition she deserved. At the same time, she had hoped to keep her own magic hidden from the world. Even so, thanks to the request she previously made, the Empire agrees to provide proper medical treatment for her mother at the Imperial Hospital in the capital. After spending some time with her mother and seeing her safely settled, Safiria leaves the hospital room. As she walks through the hallway, she notices an apple rolling across the floor. She picks it up and quietly reflects that it is a rather nostalgic-looking apple. Suddenly, a young boy rushes over, snatches the apple from her hands, and demands that she return it because he intends to take it to someone important. The boy's mother immediately scolds him, telling him that it is a terrible thing to say and an even worse thing to do to a baby. Safiria calmly responds that everything is perfectly fine. The moment those words leave her mouth, both the boy and his mother freeze in complete shock. They cannot believe that the baby standing before them is actually speaking. At that very moment, someone approaches Safiria and politely informs her that it is time to depart for the castle. Narguria notices her expression and asks whether something is wrong. Safiria casually replies that nothing has happened and that she merely saw an apple roll past her. However, the instant the mother and her son realize that the talking baby is none other than Safiria, their expressions completely change. They immediately conclude that she must be the fresh blood executioner. Without another word, the two of them hurriedly flee from the area. Watching them disappear, Safiria is left utterly confused. She silently wonders what in the world the title Fresh Blood Executioner is even supposed to mean. The scene then shifts to Bioland Castle, where Safiria is brought before the ruler. As she kneels in accordance with proper etiquette, a voice gently instructs her to raise her head. The speaker admits that he simply does not have the heart to force a baby to remain kneeling before him. The Lord then warmly introduces himself and greets her, addressing her by an unexpected title as he welcomes her. He calls her Safiria, the Fresh Blood Executioner. Hearing those unbelievable words, Safiria can only stare in complete bewilderment, wondering what on earth is happening and how she has somehow ended up being given such an absurd nickname. The report continues with the detailed injuries suffered by each member of the Night Brigade. Their leader has his vision impaired, receives deep lacerations on his right arm and left leg, and suffers severe blunt force trauma to the head. The next member endures a merciless beating, leaving his entire upper body covered in bruises, especially across his face, while also sustaining a serious neck sprain. Another has his nasal cavity, oral cavity, and bronchial tubes badly burned. One of them contracts gangrene in both knees as a result of extreme frostbite and also receives severe lacerations across his body. Merely listening to the horrifying descriptions causes the guards present to tremble in fear. However, the final victim is in by far the worst condition of them all. His entire body is riddled with numerous bone fractures caused by relentless beatings. One of his limbs is completely pierced through, while his nasal bone is also fractured. On top of his physical injuries, he suffers from severe psychological trauma. The mere mention of the name Cytherea immediately drives him into bouts of insanity and causes him to black out on the spot. The investigators explain that the villagers initially believed the horrifying incident to be nothing more than a brutal act of retaliation. However, after questioning one of the surviving thieves, they discover that the true culprit is none other than a baby named Cytherea. Everyone involved in the investigation is left utterly speechless by the unbelievable truth. The sheer brutality and efficiency displayed by an infant astonished them so greatly that they eventually give her a terrifying title, the Fresh Blood Executioner. Meanwhile, poor little Cytherea nervously looks around the room and notices that everyone present is reacting with visible panic. The atmosphere grows increasingly tense as every pair of eyes remains fixed on her. The Lord openly remarks that the level of brutality and mercilessness displayed during the battle is, in its own way, something worthy of admiration. Hearing those words immediately causes Cytherea to worry that she might actually be blamed for everything that happened. The Lord then admits that he could scarcely believe his ears when he first learned that an infant had single-handedly defeated the infamous Night Brigade. Upon hearing this, Cytherea silently realizes that those weak opponents she fought were apparently well-known and dangerous thieves all along, something she had never known. The Lord proceeds to question how she had managed to use magic in the first place. Cytherea explains that she must have unconsciously activated her magic out of sheer fear. She says that she did not even realize she had been using magic until everything was already over. The Lord then wonders whether she is capable of using magic at that very moment. In response, Cytherea immediately puts on an innocent, puppy-eyed expression and claims that she honestly is not sure. She explains that she had been so terrified during the incident that she barely remembers what actually happened. The Lord reassures her that she has nothing to fear, as he has absolutely no intention of charging her for her actions. He acknowledges that she had merely been trying to protect both herself and the other villagers. Hearing this leaves Cytherea inwardly confused. She cannot help but wonder why. If that is truly the case, the man had previously spoken so dramatically about evil and made those unsettling remarks in front of everyone. The Lord then changes the subject and mentions that the villagers have spoken very highly of Cytherea's accomplishments during that fateful night. According to them, she is nothing less than a hero whose bravery saved the entire village. The village chief even praises her battle, describing it as an incredibly cool, calm, and unassuming display of combat despite her age. Hearing such exaggerated praise leaves Cytherea completely stunned. The Lord continues by acknowledging that the battle appears to have been an exceptionally bloody one. Nevertheless, while he has no intention of punishing her for taking matters into her own hands, he jokingly reminds everyone that plotting anything against a lord would still be considered a crime. After briefly lightening the mood, he sets the joke aside and declares that it is finally time to address the real matter at hand. Turning toward one of his subordinates, the Lord asks for his professional assessment of the child. The subordinate concludes that Cytherea possesses the extraordinary ability to manipulate elemental magic in ways unlike any ordinary mage. According to the reports, she is capable of casting spells without chanting, merely by uttering a single word. He further explains that, if the investigation is accurate, she has not yet even learned how to properly control her magical abilities. Once she eventually masters that control, he believes she will undoubtedly be inducted into the Army's magic division. In his judgment, she possesses the potential to become an overwhelmingly powerful force to be reckoned with in the future. The Lord then declares that, by all means, they would want someone like Cytherea among their ranks. He remarks that once she is brought close to the battlefield, they could even provoke her into using her magic and direct that overwhelming power against the enemy forces. He casually adds that such a spectacle would certainly be entertaining. Hearing those words immediately sends Cytherea into a state of panic. She realizes that they are actually considering recruiting her into the army as a magician. In her mind, she frantically imagines the absurd situation of being sent to war despite being only 1 year old. She becomes convinced that she would undoubtedly be killed. The terrifying thought brings her to tears, as she desperately wishes they would abandon such an idea. In her opinion, Even dying from overwork would be preferable to being sent onto a battlefield. The Lord then states that he would also like to hear the opinions of the Empire's greatest magicians. Since the matter concerns magic, he believes it is only appropriate to consult those with the highest authority on the subject. Soon afterward, the 3 imperial magicians arrive. The first magician immediately walks over, picks Safiria up into his arms, and happily comments on how fortunate they are that such a talented child is also unbelievably adorable. Meanwhile, Safiria is internally on the verge of tears, as the muscular man is holding her so tightly that she feels as though her tiny body is being crushed. The magician then asks the Lord whether this little girl truly annihilated the notorious bandit group. The Lord responds by telling Magcarlo that his behavior is frightening the child. However, Magcarlo merely laughs and announces that he intends to give her a kiss so they can become closer to one another. At that exact moment, another magician suddenly appears and strikes Magcarlo without warning, stopping him in his tracks. Completely bewildered, Magcarlo turns toward Yorumi and asks what that attack was supposed to mean. Yorumi calmly replies that it was merely a warning. Magcarlo protests that only someone like her could call an attack delivered within 1/10 of a second a mere warning. He jokingly argues that she should at least use magic if she intends to strike people like that. Yorumi casually responds that using magic would simply be too troublesome. Still rubbing the spot where he was struck, Magcarlo suddenly remembers another incident and complains that his lips had almost been burned by her magic earlier as well. Before the two can continue their argument, a third magician steps forward and sternly asks what the two of them think they are doing while standing in the presence of His Majesty. He reminds them to return to their proper positions and conduct themselves with dignity. The 3 imperial magicians are then introduced. Luli possesses the title of Insight, Magcarlo bears the title of Judgment, and Yorumi Ford holds the title of Decided Judgment, each serving directly in the presence of His Majesty. Witnessing all 3 of them gathered together in a single room causes the surrounding guards to quietly murmur among themselves. None of them can recall ever seeing the Empire's 3 greatest magicians assembled in one place before. Safiria reflects that imperial magicians stand at the absolute pinnacle of every magician's aspirations. They occupy the highest magical position bestowed by the Empire itself. In addition to their authority, they are granted noble titles equivalent to Viscount and Duke, and are even permitted to bear the prestigious surnames Nicholas or Beorand. At present, there are only 3 individuals in the entire Empire who hold these extraordinary positions, making them the very definition of the nation's magical elite. The Lord expresses his satisfaction that all 3 of them have gathered together. Since they are present, he wishes to hear their completely honest opinions regarding Safiria. Magcarlo admits that making such a judgment is difficult because they know almost nothing about the child. He cheerfully remarks that she is certainly very beautiful, but beyond that, all they have heard are the frightening rumors surrounding the so-called fresh blood executioner. Luli then mentions that the title she heard from one of the army doctors is entirely different. According to that doctor, Safiria is known as the Silver-Haired Nightmare. Magcarlo immediately wonders what such a strange title is even supposed to mean. Luli simply replies that, in her opinion, it sounds considerably more elegant than the title Magcarlo had just mentioned. Listening to the conversation leaves Safiria internally horrified. She cannot help but think that both nicknames are absolutely terrible. None of this is good for her situation. She desperately needs these influential magicians to see her as nothing more than a harmless, peaceful, sweet, and innocent little baby. Otherwise, they might genuinely decide to recruit her into the army and send her off to war. Seeing that they still know very little about the child, the Lord calmly suggests that, if they have questions, they should simply ask Safiria herself. Safiria holds out her hand and suggests that they ask their questions one by one instead. The Lord agrees and declares that she will answer every question truthfully. He announces that anyone who has a question should ask their young executioner without hesitation. His words immediately make Safiria think that he is definitely not a good person. Yorumi is the first to stand up and question her. She asks why, despite giving the bandits such a severe beating and overpowering them completely, Safiria did not kill any of them. Safiria explains that it is the first time she has ever used magic, so she simply goes overboard. More importantly, she believes that killing someone is wrong because she has made a promise to her father. She also remembers her brother saying that he is going to stop the war so that people will no longer have to use magic to hurt others. Because of that, she promises her brother that she will never use magic to kill people. That is simply what she believes. After hearing her explanation, Yurumi states that she understands. The next person to question her is Luli. Luli points out that Safiria possesses overwhelming power, and such tremendous strength is something that people naturally fear. She remarks that this power could even end up hurting those closest to her, and asks what she would do if that ever happened. Safiria spends a moment thinking before answering that she would simply run away. She says that she and her family would live somewhere far away from everyone else, because her family means everything to her. They are the most precious people in her life. Hearing that answer, Luli quietly thinks that Safiria is right. Meanwhile, Safiria can only wonder what kind of answer Luli had been expecting from her in the first place. Finally, it becomes Macarlo's turn to ask a question. He remarks that it would normally be most appropriate for His Highness to ask this himself, but he decides to do so instead. He asks that if Safiria officially becomes a magician, serving under His Highness, she will naturally be assigned subordinates. If that happens, how many subordinates would she request? Safiria thinks carefully before replying that she does not need any subordinates. In reality, she is not lying. She has no intention of becoming a soldier in the first place. Once her mother's treatment is complete, she plans to leave this place altogether. However, as soon as she looks around, she notices the large number of guards surrounding her. She instantly realizes that this is bad and thinks that she has made a serious mistake. To her surprise, Macarlo announces that she has actually passed the test. He praises her as an outstanding talent, leaving Safiria completely confused as she wonders what he is even talking about. Macarlo then addresses His Majesty and explains that Safiria is indeed someone who becomes deeply attached to the people around her. He says that, under normal circumstances, magicians are assigned a number of subordinates. However, the other 3 individuals who became wizards all gave the exact same answer, believing that subordinates would only become a hindrance to them. With that, he officially welcomes Safiria into their family and declares that he has no objections to accepting her. His Majesty remarks that it seems all 4 of them have something in common. He then comments that he has indeed granted his favor to her, before referring to them all as an arrogant group of magicians. Safiria immediately begs everyone to pretend that none of this ever happened. She insists that it is not as though she actually wanted to join Nargoria's group. Her desperate denial only confuses everyone even more. Instead, they interpret her reaction as proof that she is simply being considerate toward His Majesty, convincing themselves that she is indeed a kind and thoughtful child. Their misunderstanding only makes Safiria protest even more strongly, insisting that it is nothing like that at all. That entire series of events eventually results in her receiving the lowest rank of nobility, the title of baronet. After enduring that exhausting ordeal, she receives an official letter of appointment, naming her a magician of the Imperial Guard. Just then, His Majesty suddenly remarks that he has almost forgotten something important. He reveals that he has also come up with a second name for her. Safiria immediately wonders what he means by a second name. His Majesty explains that he should have bestowed it upon her at the same time as her title of mage. He comments that constantly being called the Executioner's Nightmare, or whatever people have been calling her all this time, must have been rather unpleasant. Therefore, from that day onward, he officially declares that her new name shall be Safiria of Shatan. Safiria is left completely stunned, unable to understand what he means. However, she later discovers the true meaning behind that name. It is only then that she finally realizes what kind of person His Majesty truly is. The scene then cuts to Safiria trying to walk down a flight of stairs. However, for a baby, a staircase is an incredibly cruel obstacle. As she carefully makes her way down, she suddenly loses her balance and falls. Fortunately, she lands directly against Narguria's chest instead of hitting the ground. Narguria gently picks her up and asks how her audience with the king went. Safiria explains that she has officially become a magician. Along with receiving a noble title, she is now entitled to an exceptional salary and generous rewards based on the results of battles. Recalling everything her older sister once told her about the luxurious lifestyle enjoyed by great magicians, she concludes that it is not a bad arrangement at all. She even thinks that she has moved one step closer to her dream of living in luxury without having to work, provided that she never has to participate in an actual war. Narguria reassures her that there is nothing to worry about. She explains that a magician holds one of the most important positions in the military and will naturally have many subordinates serving under them. Hearing that reminds Safiria that she has almost forgotten something. She immediately remarks that only Big Sis will be her subordinate. Narguria looks genuinely surprised before happily declaring that it would be an honor to serve as Safiria's knight. However, Safiria quickly clarifies that she never said she wanted Narguria to become her knight. She only meant that Narguria would be her only subordinate. Those words caused Narguria to blush intensely. Completely overwhelmed with happiness, she tightly hugs Safiria, while declaring that she will devote the rest of her life to serving her. Safiria had been fully prepared for Narguria to dislike the idea of becoming the subordinate of a baby, but instead, it appears that she enjoys the idea far more than expected. As they continue walking through the marketplace, Safiria's attention is drawn to a basket of fresh apples. Narguria notices where she is looking and tells her that apples are good for her health. Safiria hesitates because she feels embarrassed about spending Narguria's money. However, Narguria immediately insists that everything she owns also belongs to Safiria, and that Safiria is free to use it however much and whenever she wishes. An elderly shopkeeper notices them and kindly asks Safiria whether she is looking for something. Safiria explains that she has come on behalf of her mother. The elderly woman is astonished upon hearing that such a tiny child is running errands for her family. Narguria proudly adds that Safiria is, of course, a very special person. Just then, several villagers begin talking among themselves. They mention that the baby who defeated the infamous bandits has arrived in the city. One of them recalls discussing the incident with her husband and saying that such a child must surely be some kind of monster. She tries to remember the baby's name. The moment they realize that the child standing before them is the very same Safiria, the elderly woman is so shocked that she nearly collapses on the spot. The villagers immediately begin offering her whatever food she wants, desperately asking her to accept it. Watching the entire scene unfold, Narguria remarks that Safiria has somehow managed to frighten even such a kind old woman. The scene then cuts to Safiria visiting her mother. Her mother warmly congratulates her and tells her how proud she is of everything she has accomplished. However, she gently reminds Safiria that she does not need to do anything dangerous. She explains that, although she sometimes forgets that Safiria is still just a baby because of how mature she acts, Safiria should simply do what she enjoys and never attempt anything impossible. Hearing those heartfelt words, Safiria silently reassures her mother in her heart that she has nothing to worry about. In her previous life, she literally died from working herself to death. Because of that, she vows that she will never meet the same fate in this life. She will never betray her mother's trust, and she will never make her cry. Just then, Rogan notices the basket of fruit and asks Narguria who brought all of it. Narguria explains that when they stopped by the fruit shop earlier, the shopkeepers were the ones who generously gave them the fruit. But before her mother can even finish speaking, Safiria immediately rushes over and stops her. Since she is widely known on the streets as the Blood Executioner, people fear her immensely, and Safiria sincerely hopes that her mother does not hear that infamous title being mentioned. With that, the knighthood ceremony comes to an end, and everyone proceeds to the Imperial Military Executive Council. One after another, the council members welcome Safiria, saying that it is a pleasure to meet her. Safiria humbly responds that although she is still very young, she will do everything she can for the sake of the country, and thanks everyone for welcoming her. After expressing her gratitude, she quietly returns to her seat. However, not everyone is pleased with her presence. One of the officers sarcastically remarks that the army has apparently become nothing more than a playhouse for children. Another immediately tells Bossler to keep his mouth shut, but Bossler refuses to stay silent. He questions the commander, asking whether he expects them all to stand in matching uniforms while being intimidated by a mere child. According to Bossler, what the military is doing is nothing short of ridiculous. The commander calmly replies that His Majesty has personally acknowledged Safiria's achievements and abilities, and therefore no one has the right to question the decision. Bossler, however, argues that the commander's words imply that even he is not completely satisfied with the appointment. He insists that no one present truly agrees with placing such a young child on the same rank as them, and wonders what His Majesty could possibly have been thinking, or who might be behind such a nonsensical decision. Meanwhile, Safiria quietly reflects on the situation. She believes that the kingdom cannot simply leave someone capable of using powerful magic in the countryside, as such a person could eventually become a threat if left unchecked. She concludes that this must be the very purpose of the Order of Magicians, to identify and recruit talented individuals before they become future troublemakers. In her opinion, the only unusual aspect of the situation is that she happens to be a baby. From a political standpoint, she does not consider the decision unreasonable. In fact, she would be more than happy to devote herself to safeguarding Chalian if everyone continued underestimating her abilities. Bosler then demands that Safiria say something instead of remaining silent. Safiria calmly replies that she simply wishes to ask him a single question. She asks whether he has ever made a mistake in his life. Bosler immediately becomes irritated and demands to know what she means, insisting that he has no idea where such a question is coming from. Safiria reminds him that she was the one who defeated the bandits. Bosler angrily declares that he has no intention of letting her get away with speaking to him like that. Safiria calmly agrees, saying that she is indeed the person who merely defeated a small group of people whom she had never even heard of before. She then acknowledges that Bosler himself must have accomplished many remarkable achievements throughout his career. If ability alone were the deciding factor, she reasons that there should naturally be someone even more capable than her. Since no truly foolish person would believe otherwise, she politely tells him not to worry. She realizes that she has intentionally used reverse psychology against him, and it appears to have worked exactly as she intended. Unable to control his anger any longer, Bosler repeatedly shouts at her to shut up, calling her nothing more than a little brat. Hearing this, Safiria innocently wonders whether his reaction means that everything he has accomplished depends entirely on the powerful people standing above him. Bosler angrily insists that this is exactly why she should remain silent and obediently respect her elders. Safiria quietly reflects that although she has just been told to stay silent, she has chosen not to obey, making her wonder whether that makes her a bad girl. Her innocent remark causes everyone else in the room to burst into laughter. One elderly officer laughs so hard that he jokingly says if the two of them continue arguing like this, his stomach is going to burst from laughing. Safiria politely apologizes to everyone, saying that she is sorry for putting them through such an awkward situation. The elderly man then rises from his seat and remarks that she truly deserves to be His Majesty's favorite. He comments that being granted 2 names is evidence of just how special she is. Walking over to her, he warmly shakes her hand, introduces himself as the commander, and encourages everyone else to do the same. Following his lead, each member of the council approaches Safiria, shakes her hand, and introduces themselves one after another. Although the atmosphere quickly becomes much friendlier, Bosler remains absolutely furious. Being publicly embarrassed by a mere child deeply wounds his pride, and he cannot forgive the insult she has dealt him. Just then, Bosler notices someone approaching. The newcomer looks directly at Safiria and remarks that Bosler is absolutely right, declaring that she truly is one incredibly nasty baby. Safiria sits reading a book with a bright smile on her face, clearly in an unusually cheerful mood. Seeing her expression, Nargura remarks to the others that she appears to be in remarkably high spirits today. Hearing that comment, Safiria wonders whether she truly looks that happy. The reason for her good mood actually traces back to a conversation that takes place only a few hours earlier inside the Emperor's office. During that meeting, His Majesty informs her about an upcoming imperial bout. He explains that the event is intended to reassure those who are still unaware of the true capabilities of the Imperial Army. At the same time, it is meant to convince the citizens that the tax money being spent on military affairs is being put to proper use. Listening to the explanation, Safiria cannot understand why any of this concerns her and wonders what it has to do with her. His Majesty then reveals that, in the upcoming Imperial match, she is scheduled to fight Bosler. The announcement shocks her so completely that she nearly cries out in disbelief. For a brief moment, however, she struggles to remember exactly who Bosler is. She first wonders whether they are referring to that old man, but she is immediately corrected and reminded that the old man is the bandit Beria. Bosler, on the other hand, is one of the Imperial Magic Corps, young powerhouses, and a highly skilled user of wind magic. Upon hearing that description, she immediately recognizes who he is. Ordinarily, the participants in the Imperial bouts are not informed about the identities of their opponents beforehand. However, Bosler personally submits a direct request, asking to fight Safiria. His Majesty explains that the Imperial bout will serve as an opportunity to make Safiria's abilities known to the public and erase the anxiety spreading among the citizens. Since she is merely a baby who has been elevated to nobility because of her status as a magician, the unusual circumstances surrounding her appointment have caused considerable unease among the populace. That is the official explanation prepared for the event, and Safiria has to admit that it is a rather well thought out justification. Even so, she cannot help believing that the true reason is much simpler. Basler is most likely seeking revenge for the public humiliation she inflicted upon him earlier. Thinking that His Majesty already understands the situation so well, she silently wishes he would simply put an end to the matter altogether. Instead, His Majesty declares that the arrangements have already been decided because he personally wishes to witness her fight. Hearing that only makes Safiria think that everyone involved is unbelievably sadistic. She then begins worrying about the consequences of defeat. She wonders what will happen if she loses, and whether such an outcome means she will die. She is assured that no one will lose their life, because the imperial bout is conducted under strict rules that limit what the participants are permitted to do during combat. However, she is also warned that if she displays a disgraceful performance before His Majesty, she should consider the promising path of her military career to be all but over. Should she lose to Basler, she will immediately be reassigned to the logistics department. Upon hearing that, Safiria simply thinks that, if such a thing happens, then it cannot really be helped. The logistics department is responsible for replenishing supplies and transporting materials, making it little more than a menial occupation that offers no meaningful opportunities to accumulate military merit. Surprisingly, rather than feeling discouraged, Safiria begins to see the arrangement in a positive light. She realizes that if she works in logistics, her magic will make the job exceptionally easy. More importantly, she will no longer be required to fight on the front lines, meaning she can live in relative safety. Thinking about it from that perspective, she concludes that the situation sounds rather wonderful. Before long, she secretly decides that she intends to lose the match as thoroughly as possible. His Majesty announces that the imperial bout will take place exactly 1 week later, and instructs her to devote herself entirely to refining her magical abilities and combat skills until then. At that point, Safiria requests a single favor. She asks whether, if there are any grimoires within the capital, she might be allowed to study them. Remembering that she has taught herself magic without any formal instruction, His Majesty acknowledges that she is indeed a self-taught magician. Satisfied with her request, he grants her permission to access the forbidden book section of the Imperial Library. Furthermore, if he can find someone who happens to have free time and possesses exceptional knowledge of magic, he promises to assign that individual as her guide while she studies. Safiria expresses her sincere gratitude to His Majesty. As far as she is concerned, even if she loses the imperial match, she will still have a safe backup position waiting for her in the logistics department. If she performs well there, the chances of being reassigned to another post are extremely small. On top of that, she has an entire week before the match, during which she can freely read as many grimoires as she desires. Better yet, she will receive direct instruction in magic from an expert. To her, the arrangement could not have turned out any better. She feels as though she is accomplishing 3 objectives at once, perhaps even 4, all with a single opportunity. As a result, she cannot hide how delighted she feels. Meanwhile, everyone around her cannot help wondering why she keeps smiling to herself. Ever since returning from the audience with His Majesty, she has worn the same cheerful expression, leaving the others thoroughly puzzled. The scene then shifts as Lulu enters the room and immediately comments on how untidy it is. Ragna looks at the unfamiliar woman and wonders who she might be. Upon seeing her, Safiria quickly approaches and respectfully addresses her as Her Excellency. Lulu immediately expresses her displeasure at such a formal title and tells Safiria to simply call her Lulu instead. Accepting the request, Safiria addresses her as Lulu and politely asks what brings her there today. Lulu asks whether His Majesty has not already informed her. Since Safiria will be studying grimoires to prepare herself for the upcoming imperial match, Lulu has been assigned to oversee her magical education. His Majesty had specifically mentioned assigning someone who was not occupied with other duties. Since Lulu has recently completed a major task within the Imperial Library, she happens to have plenty of free time and has therefore been selected for the role. The two of them then make their way to the Imperial Library. As Safiria gazes around, she is amazed by the enormous number of books surrounding her. Lulu explains that the grimoires are not stored in the main library, but are instead kept underground within the forbidden book section. Only those who possess special authorization are permitted to enter this area. After leading Safiria inside, Lulu helps her take a seat at a stone desk. She explains that there are no lamps permanently installed in the underground chamber because of fire prevention measures. Even the desks and chairs are carved entirely from stone, making the place feel cold, plain, and rather uninviting. Once Safiria is seated, Lulu lights a portable lamp to illuminate the room. She then explains the restrictions placed upon Saphiria's permission. She has only been authorized to read grimoires, meaning she is allowed to retrieve books solely from the designated bookshelf nearby. Lulu then asks what kind of grimoire Saphiria wishes to study. She wonders whether there is a particular type of magic Saphiria hopes to use, or a specific phenomenon she wants to create. Instead of answering directly, Saphiria asks whether activating magic first requires assigning a name to it. Lulu realizes that Saphiria is referring to the command pact. She explains that a magic spell is essentially an order given to an object. Magic functions by manipulating an object through commands, and before such commands can be issued, the object must first be assigned a name. That entire process is known as the command pact. Embarrassed by her lack of knowledge, Saphiria apologizes and admits that she understands almost nothing about these principles. Lulu gently asks whether there is something specific she wishes to learn. Saphiria explains that, until now, she has only been capable of activating spells by using her hands. However, she believes there should be other methods of assigning names to objects besides direct physical contact, and wants to know whether that is true. Lulu confirms that she is absolutely correct. There are several different methods for establishing a command pact. The first is the one Saphiria already uses, hand control, which involves commanding an object that she is touching directly. Another method is fire contact. There is also direct contact control, followed by designating coordinates and issuing commands to whatever exists within the specified location. Beyond those are more advanced techniques such as absolute territory isolation, manipulating an object that is already under another person's command, burden application, and conquer control. After explaining the various methods, Lulu suggests that Saphiria try practicing absolute territory isolation. As an example, she selects a spell that specifically utilizes that technique and recommends it as a good starting point. Upon understanding the principle behind the spell, Saphiria realizes that this method should allow her to use magic even when the target is far beyond the reach of her hands. Eager to test the theory, she immediately focuses on a nearby statue and attempts to cast the elongation experimental spell using the technique of absolute territory isolation. Lulu stares at Saphiria in astonishment as the young girl asks whether she has performed the spell correctly. Still visibly amazed, Lulu confirms that it is absolutely perfect. What astonishes her even more is the fact that Saphiria has managed to activate the spell without chanting a single word, something that is almost unbelievable for someone attempting magic for the first time. Curious about this revelation, Saphiria asks how spells are normally activated. In response, Lulu demonstrates the standard method by casting a spell herself, carefully chanting the incantation aloud as the magical formula takes shape before her eyes. Watching the demonstration, Saphiria wonders whether magicians are normally required to chant like that every time they cast a spell. Lulu explains that chanting is not always necessary. If the spell is simple and one that the caster has practiced repeatedly, the entire chant can be constructed mentally, allowing the spell to be cast silently without speaking a single word. However, she adds that articulating the chant aloud makes it significantly easier to construct the spell. For ordinary magicians, vocal chanting is not only faster but also far less prone to mistakes. In addition, speaking the incantation reduces the amount of magical power consumed during the casting process, making it the preferred method for most practitioners. This explanation immediately raises another question in Saphiria's mind. She asks whether casting a spell actually consumes something from the caster. Lulu is once again astonished by the innocence of the question, realizing just how extraordinary Saphiria truly is. She explains that every time a magician uses magic, they consume mana, and as their mana is depleted, they gradually become fatigued. Lulu continues by explaining that there are two crucial factors every magician must keep in mind while casting spells. The first is the casting time. Simply put, the longer it takes to construct and complete a spell, the more magical power is consumed in the process. The second factor is the level of completion, or more precisely, the caster's comprehension of the spell itself. If a magician attempts to use a spell with only a vague or incomplete understanding of its structure and principles, the amount of mana required increases dramatically. Because of this, inexperienced magicians often fail to manifest their spells properly. Instead of successfully casting magic, they end up exhausting their mana reserves, collapse from sheer fatigue, and are left unable to produce any spell at all. Saphiria thinks that, with her years of programming experience, it is easy for her to immediately comprehend a spell's structure, even without a chant. She can still vividly remember spells with perfect accuracy, which means that she has become highly efficient in controlling and utilizing her magic power. She explains to Lulu that she understands how important regular training is when it comes to mastering efficient magic. In her opinion, continuous practice allows a mage to cast spells both quickly and accurately. Lulu agrees with her assessment. However, she points out that Safiria is already on the verge of being considered a genius. Lulu believes that if the two of them were to compete solely with offensive magic, Safiria would probably already be stronger than her. Hearing this, Safiria immediately dismisses the idea. She insists that there is no way that could be true if the competition were limited to offensive magic alone. At the same time, she realizes that Lulu seems confident about competing in other areas. This makes Safiria wonder what kind of magic Lulu actually uses. She begins to suspect that it may be related to Lulu's title, the Insight. Eventually, Safiria asks Lulu about the nature of her magic, while carefully making sure that it is acceptable for her to ask such a question. Lulu reveals that, at present, the only person who knows the true form of her magic and is still alive is His Majesty. The moment she hears that, Safiria immediately decides not to pursue the matter any further. With that, the two of them continue experimenting with new spells. The scene then shifts to Lulu preparing food for everyone. She invites them to eat, and by this point the two of them have been thoroughly tamed by her cooking. Safiria apologizes to Lulu for having to help with both the cooking and the cleaning. Lulu explains that she simply felt sympathy after seeing the state of their dirty room the previous day. While Safiria's mother remains in the hospital, the group is staying at a cheap inn that does not provide meals. Between a toddler, a knight-in-training noble lady, and a baby, none of them possess any housekeeping skills whatsoever. It appears that Lulu has witnessed firsthand the complete collapse of a lifestyle maintained by three individuals who have absolutely no ability when it comes to domestic chores. After cleaning the room, Lulu remarks to Naguria that even though she is a noble lady, it would probably be beneficial for her to learn at least some basic cooking and cleaning skills. Having no response to offer, Naguria can only apologize. The food is described as being extremely delicious. Ragna tells Safiria that she has just received milk from her mommy at the hospital, while Naguria is also thoroughly enjoying the meal that Lulu has prepared. Lulu then picks Safiria up and asks whether she would like to drink some milk. She proceeds to feed Safiria milk from her own chest. Safiria immediately questions why Lulu even has milk in the first place. Lulu reminds Safiria that, the previous day, she had expressed a desire to learn about her magic. This causes Safiria to wonder what exactly Lulu could have done to make such a thing possible. No matter how much she thinks about it, she cannot come up with a single explanation. The entire situation feels utterly horrifying to her. For the following week leading up to the Imperial bout, Lulu ends up looking after all of them in every aspect of their lives, from their magical training to their daily routines. As she prepares to leave one evening, Lulu informs them that she will come by again the next day. Everyone wishes Lulu good night before she departs. Even the bed feels exceptionally comfortable. Nevertheless, Safiria continues to think that this situation is not good at all. In her eyes, Lulu is exactly the type of woman who would spoil a man completely rotten. The scene then cuts to His Majesty suddenly sneezing. Lulu immediately becomes concerned and asks whether he has caught a cold and if she should cover him with something. His Majesty replies that it is unnecessary and that he does not mind. With that matter settled, attention turns to the next important event. The Imperial bout between Safiria and Bossler is now about to commence. Naguria continues speaking while Safiria and Lulu enjoy a relaxing bath together. As they soak in the warm water, Lulu remarks that Safiria's skin has the perfect firmness and elasticity. Safiria casually attributes it to the fact that she is still technically 0 years old. After a brief pause, Lulu finally asks whether Safiria intends to lose the duel on purpose the following day. Safiria turns toward her, before calmly admitting that, after finishing her bath, that had indeed been her plan. Lulu apologizes for becoming serious, but warns Safiria that, if matters continue as they are, Bossler is going to lose both his hands and his feet. She explains that, despite the danger, Bossler still believes Safiria is planning to fight him with complete seriousness. Safiria questions whether Bossler truly believes such a thing. Lulu apologetically replies that she does not think she should interfere in the matter any further. She then mentions that she has asked Her Majesty what should be done if Safiria were to lose, as she also needs to understand her own position in the situation. Wishing Safiria good luck, Lulu leaves Safiria, wondering whether Lulu knows something about Bosler's circumstances that she herself does not. Eventually, the day of the duel arrives. As Safiria begins climbing the stairs, she notices Bosler waiting nearby. She tells him that she has only come to receive an explanation of the rules and wonders why he is there as well. Bosler explains that he has just finished an audience with His Majesty. He then mocks her, declaring that if she intends to run away with her tail between her legs, now is the time to do so. He taunts her further by asking whether she does not want to end up crying. Safiria questions whether he was truly the one who requested the duel against her in the first place. Although momentarily flustered by the question, Bosler quickly regains his composure. He declares that it does not matter because this will be the last time she gets to behave like a fool. He confidently proclaims that he is going to crush her completely in front of His Majesty. His words cause Safiria to wonder whether he would not feel ashamed of defeating a baby before such a large audience. Bosler continues speaking with unwavering confidence, insisting that she must be frightened. According to him, regardless of how powerful she may be, she is still nothing more than a baby. He then claims that, if she insists on proceeding with the duel, he is willing to grant her a single favor. He suggests allowing her to strike first or even giving her a handicap by remaining completely still in his starting position. After presenting those options, he asks what she thinks. In response, Safiria says that, if he truly intends to grant her one request, she has something in mind. She explains that climbing the stairs is troublesome for her and politely asks him to carry her to the top instead. Having little choice but to comply, Bosler reluctantly gives in and carries her. Before the match begins, several villagers gather around the arena and begin talking among themselves. They remark that the duel is finally about to start and that Bosler is going to face the infamous cold-blooded executioner baby. The arena itself measures 5 meters on each side, while 2 scaffolds have been erected at a distance of 15 meters from one another. The rules of the duel state that both sorcerers are to stand upon their respective scaffolds, face one another, and engage in battle. Bosler takes his position and prepares himself for the match. At the same time, Narguria sees Safiria off, offering a blessing and praying that God watches over her. As a boat approaches to carry Safiria to her scaffold, she tells the boatman that she does not need it. Believing this to be more appropriate, she creates a white carpet with her magic and gracefully makes her own entrance onto the scaffold. The rules are then announced. Only wind magic is permitted during the match. Victory is achieved if the opponent falls from the scaffold. Since this is merely a friendly duel, both participants are instructed to refrain from using magic more powerful than necessary, and they are reminded to keep this rule firmly in mind. Upon hearing the conditions, Safiria quietly thinks that if an infant were to fall into the surrounding moat, it would surely die. His Majesty reassures her by explaining that, should she fall into the water, soldiers stationed nearby are prepared to rescue her immediately. Everything has already been arranged for her safety. Bosler then calls out to Safiria, warning her not to lose on purpose. He openly reveals that he already knows about her intention to deliberately throw the match. His words immediately embarrass Safiria, and she hastily tells him not to say such things in front of His Majesty. Bosler explains that, if he wins the duel, His Majesty has promised to grant him one wish. Because of that, allowing her to go easy on him would serve no purpose, nor would asking him to give up his wish. He therefore declares a change of plans. If he emerges victorious, his wish will be for Safiria to be sent to the front lines. His Majesty calmly agrees, stating that he will indeed grant Bosler's wish if he wins. Hearing this, Safiria cries out in alarm. She quickly declares that, if she wins instead, she wishes to remain in the rear lines and be given plenty of delicious food to eat. His Majesty immediately rejects the request, but adds that he will at least consider it if she is victorious. With the matter settled, both duelists are instructed to prepare themselves. Even before the duel officially begins, Bosler starts chanting and immediately casts High Wind. Watching him, Safiria realizes that he has begun chanting before the match has even started. She inwardly complains that it is unfair. As the violent wind rushes toward her, she desperately attempts to dodge it, wondering whether he is genuinely trying to kill her. Bosler fights like one of the kingdom's young elite sorcerers, displaying the experience and discipline he has gained through countless battles. Without hesitation, he unleashes High Wind once again. At last, Safiria responds by casting High Wind herself. It takes her only a single second to copy Bosler's spell, and she accomplishes it without chanting a single word. Now that the situation has completely changed, Safiria realizes that she can no longer afford to lose intentionally. She understands that she must win. Bosler immediately follows with air shot. Safiria realizes that, with her small body and light weight, a direct hit would be devastating. She knows she cannot endure the tremendous pressure created by the wind. Determining that there is only one solution, she also casts air shot, intending to meet his attack head-on. The two spells collide directly against one another, as both sorcerers continue exchanging attacks without hesitation. Their confrontation becomes a true battle between accomplished wind sorcerers, with each continuously launching spell after spell in an effort to overpower the other. Bosler confidently believes he has more than enough time to neutralize every attack she sends toward him. He suddenly casts air shot from beneath Safiria's footing, catching her off guard and causing her to lose her balance and fall. Her light body becomes a serious disadvantage, as even her own weight works against her. Without wasting the opportunity, Bosler begins a lengthy incantation before finally unleashing Lost Place directly at Safiria. Not only is Safiria on the verge of losing, but Bosler also uses demon separation behind her, leaving her with no room to escape. She is sent flying off her scaffold and realizes that she is truly finished this time. As she begins to fall, however, her eyes suddenly catch sight of her family in the audience. Even though she had specifically told them not to come and watch her match, they are still there, cheering for her without hesitation. That single glimpse gives her the determination she needs. She immediately directs the wind beneath herself, carefully adjusting its output to a single degree. Thanks to her exceptional ability to comprehend magic instantly, she quickly understands the spell's structure, assigns it the shortest possible chant, and casts it at incredible speed. The spell activates just in time, allowing her to regain control and land safely back on her scaffold. Bosler is left completely stunned, unable to believe that she has recovered from what should have been a certain defeat. After regaining her footing, Safiria calmly asks whether Bosler has already exhausted his magical power, remarking that she is still capable of using more magic. Refusing to accept such a statement, Bosler insists that she should not underestimate him. At the same time, Safiria's family loudly encourages her to keep fighting and give everything she has. Hearing the commotion, Bosler wonders whether Safiria actually knows the people making so much noise. She explains that they are her mother and her brother. She then admits that, for the sake of her family, she absolutely cannot allow herself to lose. Her unwavering declaration causes Bosler to chuckle before he decides to reveal his true intentions. He declares that he will pour every last drop of his remaining magical power into a single attack, his strongest spell. As he prepares it, he questions whether she truly intends to confront it head-on. He then mocks her by claiming that, although she possesses a beautiful face, unlike what he describes as her plain mother and ordinary brother, he wants to see what she is truly made of. The entire arena falls into complete silence. Safiria can barely process what she has just heard. She repeatedly questions his words in disbelief, wondering what he has actually said about her mother and her brother. The realization strikes her all at once. An overwhelming fury erupts from within her. Her expression changes so drastically that she resembles a terrifying old granny consumed by rage. She demands to know exactly what he has just said. In the very next instant, an enormous explosion of magical power erupts throughout the entire arena. The violent blast completely overwhelms Bosler, sending him flying high into the air and far beyond the battlefield. Everyone watches in complete shock, wondering whether Big Brother is even alive after such an impact. He has already lost consciousness and is now falling helplessly from an incredible height. If he crashes into the moat below, he will certainly die. Seeing the situation, Ragna urgently calls out to Safiria, warning her that Bosler is going to die unless she does something immediately. Safiria quickly regains her composure and realizes that she has to save him. Without wasting another moment, she casts Term of Annihilation. To the astonishment of everyone watching, Bosler's falling body suddenly changes direction, making it appear as though he is flying through the air instead of plummeting to his death. The spectators can only watch in amazement as his trajectory carries him far away from the arena. Beyond Violent Castle lies a beautiful body of water known as Lake Luhar. On clear days, the lake's crystal-like surface reflects the surrounding scenery with perfect clarity, making it one of the region's most famous scenic attractions. A small resting place built along its shore is especially popular because it offers a breathtaking view of both the castle and the shimmering lake. It is there, beside the peaceful waters of Lake Luhar, that Bosler finally lands safely. With her opponent defeated and no longer able to continue the match, Safiria is officially declared the winner. She quietly remarks that it finally feels as though she has truly won. Meanwhile, everyone present remains frozen in place, literally trembling in fear after witnessing the overwhelming display of her power. Completely unconcerned by their reactions, Safiria happily runs over to embrace her mother and brother, celebrating the victory together as the three of them enjoy one of the happiest moments of their lives. His Majesty formally appoints Safiria as the Imperial Army Central Command Magic Division Chief of Staff before dismissing her from the audience. The duel she fought earlier eventually comes to be known as the execution at Lohar Lake. Although Safiria emerges as the victor, because both combatants become incapable of continuing the fight, there are later claims that the spell she used violated the rule prohibiting the use of magic stronger than necessary. As Safiria leaves, she asks the subordinate whether His Majesty is in a bad mood. The subordinate explains that the Emperor appears displeased because the duel did not unfold as smoothly as he had intended. He also hands Safiria her official appointment letter, confirming her position as the Chief of Staff of the Central Command Magic Division. Curious about her new responsibilities, Safiria asks what kind of position a Central Command Magic Chief of Staff actually is. The subordinate explains that the Central Command is the branch of the Imperial Army responsible for the security and defense of the capital. As the Chief of the Magic Staff, Safiria will be expected to assist the commander by offering counsel and guidance as the Army's foremost expert on magic. Hearing this, Safiria wonders whether being the chief would be an exhausting and troublesome job. The subordinate explains that the chief is one of the key figures in the capital's defensive system. Although she has been spared from being deployed to the front lines, it appears that she will not be receiving an easy administrative position in the rear either. He further explains that, since the position has only recently been established, no one truly knows how she should carry out her duties or manage the responsibilities that come with the role. According to him, this uncertainty itself reflects the careful consideration His Majesty has given to Safiria when creating the appointment. The subordinate then presents another set of documents intended for Lady Narguria. He explains that, because Narguria is not yet an imperial soldier, but merely an apprentice in the Order of Knights, she must complete a formal appointment procedure before she can officially be recognized as Safiria's subordinate and become eligible to receive a salary. Safiria sincerely thanks the subordinate for his assistance. In response, he politely instructs her to visit the Human Resources Department to complete the remaining procedures, including the paperwork required for processing her own salary. The moment Safiria hears that she will finally be getting paid, she becomes genuinely delighted. While happily walking away with thoughts of money filling her mind, she suddenly loses her footing and falls to the ground. As she gathers the scattered documents, her attention shifts to Narguria's paperwork, causing her to wonder what Narguria's full name actually is. At that very moment, someone approaches from behind and remarks that Lady Shaitan appears to have received quite a significant promotion. Safiria turns around and immediately recognizes the speaker as the commander. She quickly asks him not to address her by that nickname. Amused, the commander casually suggests that perhaps she would prefer being called the Fresh Blood Executioner instead. Safiria immediately objects, insisting that the alternative is even worse. The commander then comments that it was quite a remarkable victory. Surprised by his words, Safiria asks whether he had been watching the duel. He laughs and explains that he and his men had watched the entire battle together, adding that every one of his soldiers had been astonished by the display of her magic. He then mentions that he will be departing for a new battlefield the following day, and jokingly invites Safiria to accompany him, explaining that if she participates in the battle, she would undoubtedly earn numerous achievements. Without the slightest hesitation, Safiria firmly refuses the invitation. The commander simply laughs, gently pats her, and admits that he had only been teasing her. He nevertheless praises her magic once again, remarking that it had truly been extraordinary. In his opinion, it is no surprise that she had managed to wipe out the Night Beast bandits single-handedly. Safiria modestly insists that he is exaggerating. She explains that defeating the bandits would never have been possible without Narguria's help, and that the credit should not belong to her alone. Upon hearing Narguria's name, the commander recalls the young knight in training who always accompanies Safiria. Thinking back, he remembers that Narguria is the youngest daughter of the House of Lunavent. Safiria asks whether Lunavent is the name of Narguria's family. The commander is surprised and wonders if she truly does not know. Safiria explains that she does not. Narguria has never told her full name even once. The only thing Narguria ever shared was that she had been forced to leave her home after failing as a knight. Safiria had not even known where her home was located. From what she had always heard, Nargurya was merely a failed knight who had been sent away to the frontiers. The commander then explains that the Lunavent family is a prestigious lineage of knights, with a long-standing reputation. He remarks that it must be difficult for someone lacking talent as a knight to belong to such a distinguished household. However, Safiria immediately disagrees with that assessment. In her eyes, Nargurya is anything but unskilled. She is strong enough to defeat the chief of bandits in a single instant. Not only is she powerful, but she is also highly competent in every task she undertakes. According to Safiria, Nargurya's only flaw is that she is excessively kind-hearted. With that conviction, Safiria makes a request to the commander. She asks whether he could someday take her to the Lunavent estate. Her intention is to ensure that Nargurya's family properly understands the circumstances surrounding her. She wants them to know how Nargurya has fought and worked as a knight, and she also wants them to learn that Nargurya will now be serving directly under her. The commander quickly understands the implication behind the request. He questions whether that is the reason Safiria wanted him to guide her there, so that his status as commander could serve as a powerful endorsement. Safiria honestly admits that she is uncertain whether the family would take her words seriously if she were to appear before them alone as a child. She politely apologizes for her rudeness and sincerely asks for his cooperation. The commander laughs at her straightforwardness. He reveals that he also has his own thoughts regarding Nargurya's situation. After hearing Safiria's account, he decides that he will personally act as Nargurya's guarantor. His agreement fills Safiria with gratitude, and she thanks him sincerely. With that settled, the two of them make plans to visit the Lunavent estate together. Eventually, the day arrives, and they stand before Count Lunavent. Everyone who needs to be present has gathered. However, the atmosphere is far worse than Safiria had anticipated. For some reason, another individual has also decided to accompany them. As the Count calmly sips his tea, he observes the gathering of distinguished officials before him and wonders what reason could have brought them all together on this particular day. Safiria formally announces the purpose of the visit. She states that Nargurya will be leaving her position as a trainee within the Knight Order. From now on, she will serve directly under Safiria as the assistant to the Imperial Army's Magic Chief of Staff. The Count listens and responds with mild surprise. He admits that he had expected a report regarding Nargurya successfully passing the knighthood examination. He had never imagined that she would instead end up working directly under someone of Safiria's standing. After acknowledging the information, the Count wonders whether that is all they have come to discuss. A heavy silence settles over the room. Then, Safiria speaks once more. She declares that there is another matter she wishes to address. Specifically, she intends to discuss the circumstances under which Miss Nargurya was expelled from her own home by her father. The Count immediately denies the accusation. However, Safiria points out that he was the one who assigned Nargurya the task of defeating the bandits through the Knight Order, was he not? The Count responds by insisting that he never actually expelled her from the family. According to him, he never intended to drive her out. In the Lunavent household, the path of every child is determined from the moment they are born. Anyone born into the family is expected to become a knight. If a child lacks skill, then they simply need to train harder until they improve. However, he believes that if a person cannot even bring themselves to kill a demon, then the issue lies not in their training but in their very nature. For that reason, he had hoped that sending Nargurya away from the city and into the harsh conditions of the frontier would allow her to acquire the strength necessary to kill when required. The commander listens to the Count's reasoning before calmly reminding him that every individual possesses a different personality and a different set of values. Some children, by their very nature, are simply unsuited for conflict and violence. He then directly questions whether the Count truly means that there is no place within the Lunavent family for someone like that. The Count reluctantly admits that such is the unfortunate reality. In his view, anyone bearing the Lunavent name must also be a knight. If they are not, then the family's standing and influence will gradually be undermined over time. At that moment, Yurumi sharply criticizes that way of thinking. She argues that such reasoning is selfish. In her opinion, the true threat to the Lunavent family's position is not Nargurya herself, but rather the rigid mentality of the household. The Count acknowledges the point only partially before continuing his argument. He states that the mere fact that Nargurya failed to become a knight already damages the family's reputation. If the household were to allow people to live freely in the same manner as Nargurya, then it would become impossible to preserve a family that has survived and prospered through military power for generations. Yorumi remains unconvinced. She remarks that forcing someone to carry lifelong suffering upon themselves, or compelling them to live in a way that completely opposes their natural disposition, is almost indistinguishable from placing a curse upon them. As far as she is concerned, there is nothing wrong with abandoning a household that demands such sacrifices. Her words cause the Count's anger to flare immediately. The atmosphere in the room becomes even more tense as his expression darkens. At that critical moment, Narguria finally rises to her feet. Despite everything that has happened, she declares that she is still proud of having been born into the Lunavent family. She admits that it was painful to fail to meet her father's expectations. It frustrated her endlessly that she could not become a knight and that she was unable to proudly use her family name. After being cast adrift from her former life, she found herself trapped in uncertainty, despairing over her own weakness and powerlessness. Yet even in that darkness, someone extended a hand to her. Narguria explains that it was Cytherea who gave her hope when she had none left. Hearing those words, Cytherea speaks up as well. She reminds everyone present that Narguria fought against the bandits without a moment of hesitation. She defeated them and successfully protected the village from harm. Turning toward the Count, Cytherea firmly states that Narguria's kindness is not a weakness. Rather, it is her greatest strength. She acknowledges that Narguria is not a member of the Imperial Knights, nor does she belong to any knight order. Even so, she is completely confident that Narguria will excel in her duties as a subordinate under her command. Cytherea further assures the Count that Narguria will never bring shame to the dignity of the Lunavent name. Finally, she makes a solemn declaration. She states that she will personally guarantee it. Those words cause the Count's eyes to widen in genuine surprise. The weight of a guarantee coming directly from someone of Cytherea's status is impossible to ignore. Beside them, the commander can only laugh as he witnesses the stunned reaction on the Count's face and the dramatic turn the conversation has taken. The commander explains that the girl standing before them is the greatest prodigy in the entire empire, and that her ability to make decisions should never be underestimated. He further points out that it is a knight's honor to discover and serve a worthy master. The Count spends some time in deep thought before finally reaching a decision. He entrusts Narguria to Cytherea's care, expressing regret for the hardships his daughter has endured for so long. At the same time, he seeks forgiveness from Narguria for everything that has happened in the past. Upon hearing those words, Narguria can no longer contain her emotions and breaks down in tears. Afterward, they discuss all the events that have led them to this moment. The Count listens with great interest from beginning to end, carefully hearing every detail. By the conclusion of the conversation, a serene smile appears on his face, as though a heavy burden that he has carried for years has finally been lifted from his shoulders. Cytherea feels that there is no longer any need for her to interfere in the matter involving Narguria's family. As they prepare to leave, Yorumi steps forward and presents a sword to Narguria. The weapon is Flambidge, a refined blade and a true masterpiece. The unexpected gift leaves Narguria astonished. The sword is clearly an item of immense value, making it difficult for her to believe that she is truly being allowed to accept it. The commander laughs at her reaction and explains that receiving a sword from Yorumi is an exceptionally rare honor. Rather than hesitating, Narguria should simply accept the gift with gratitude and dignity. Hearing this, Narguria immediately expresses her sincere appreciation and gratefully accepts the weapon. At that very moment, several guards arrive in a hurry and inform Yorumi that they have been searching for her everywhere. They explain that she has broken a promise made to His Majesty and that the Emperor is currently furious, demanding her immediate return. Realizing the situation, Yorumi remarks that the circumstances are troublesome. Before departing, she offers her encouragement to Cytherea and expresses her hope that they will meet again someday. With that, she takes to the skies and flies away, leaving everyone behind. The guards frantically call after her and beg her to stop, but their efforts prove completely futile. Watching her disappear into the distance, the commander remarks that Yorumi is truly a free-spirited woman. Meanwhile, Cytherea's face turns bright red with embarrassment. Noticing her unusual reaction, Narguria approaches her with concern and checks on her condition. Cytherea then reveals the reason for her embarrassment. Beneath the cloak Yorumi had been wearing, she had actually been completely naked. The revelation leaves a lasting impression on the group, and with that unusual final note, the day comes to an end. Cytherea and Narguria conclude their emotional visit to Narguria's family home, and depart after a day filled with reconciliation, heartfelt emotions, and unexpected events. Safiria finally turns 1-year-old, and today marks the day she is to be weaned from breastfeeding. She bids farewell to milk, expressing gratitude for what she considers her final meal. As she reflects on the moment, she finds it strangely emotional. In the beginning, she had felt embarrassed about breastfeeding, yet now that it is truly coming to an end, she cannot help but feel saddened by the thought. She wonders whether her mother feels the same sense of loss. Her mother gently reassures her that this does not necessarily have to be the final time. She explains that breastfeeding can continue whenever Safiria wishes, and that there is no need to regard this moment as a permanent farewell. Just then, someone calls for her attention and tells her to look in their direction. Rogan steps forward and places a flower crown upon her head. Surprised, Safiria asks whether he truly made it himself. Rogan admits that it is all he could manage to prepare for her, and wonders whether she likes it. Her response is immediate and enthusiastic. She declares that she is incredibly happy and that she loves it. Rogan, slightly flustered by her excitement, tells her to calm herself down. Watching the scene unfold, Narguria is left speechless. She reflects on how remarkable it is that they are able to celebrate Safiria's first birthday and her mother's discharge from the hospital at the same time. The significance of the occasion leaves her at a complete loss for words. The scene then shifts to Bosler, who is sitting upright in his hospital bed. Upon seeing Safiria, he questions the meaning of her visit. Safiria explains that she has come to share the celebration with him. However, Bosler immediately protests, reminding her that he had already made it clear that she is not welcome there. Unfazed, Safiria insists that it is her birthday and that the occasion should be celebrated. Bosler once again orders her to leave. Despite his words, Safiria remains where she is, causing Bosler to exclaim in frustration that she is an incredibly stubborn child. He reiterates something he has said before. There is no need for her to apologize for anything. Accepting his statement, Safiria acknowledges that he is right. She then remarks that they will meet again later before turning to leave. As she departs, Bosler calls out one final warning. He tells her that during the Night Order's long-awaited internal launch, she must be especially cautious of the black-haired woman. According to him, that individual is the one who provoked him into becoming involved in the conflict. Far away, in the remote outskirts of the imperial capital of Veoland, an unusual rumor spreads among the local children. Tales circulate about a ghostly inhabitant residing within an abandoned aristocratic mansion on the edge of the city. According to the stories, the ghost of a baby can sometimes be seen entering and leaving the old estate through a window. Witnesses claim that the mysterious figure floats around the grounds, drifting silently through the air. The rumors continue to grow with each retelling. Some insist that it is unquestionably a ghost because they have seen it floating. Others argue that the creature is even more dangerous than an ordinary spirit. Before long, it earns a fearsome nickname among the townspeople, the rampaging baby of the abandoned mansion. In reality, however, Safiria feels that there is one important correction that must be made regarding the rumors. What she is doing is not truly flying. Instead, she applies air pressure behind her body, using the resulting wind force to propel herself forward. Because of her greatly reduced weight, she can rise into the air with remarkable ease. Furthermore, after secretly researching herself in the forbidden section of the library, she develops a technique known as the gravity designator. By repeatedly applying this method, in combination with her wind manipulation, she allows herself to be carried through the air, much like a leaf caught in a powerful breeze. The result is astonishing. With a single leap, Safiria is capable of surging forward nearly 50 meters at once, hurtling through the air in a manner that appears supernatural to anyone unfortunate enough to witness it. The distance between the imperial capital and Ali village normally requires 3 full days of travel by carriage. However, Safiria is capable of covering that entire distance in only 30 minutes. When she compares it to the means of transportation from her previous life, she realizes that she is essentially a baby capable of moving at the speed of a bullet train. From an outsider's perspective, the sight must appear utterly surreal. Eventually, she returns home, and Narguria immediately wraps her in a warm embrace, welcoming her back. Together, they enter the residence. The mansion is a property personally bestowed upon her by His Majesty. Although it is an old estate rumored to be haunted by a ghost, it is incomparably more spacious and luxurious than either the village or the inn where she previously lived. Her mother and brother have already returned to Alhi village. However, because Safiria is employed by the military, she is not permitted to remain away from the capital for extended periods of time. As a result, she now resides within the mansion alongside Narguria and a handful of servants. Narguria asks about her mother and Rogan, wondering how they are doing and whether they remained healthy after their journey. Safiria reassures her that they are both perfectly fine. Rather than staying in the imperial capital, a place with which they are unfamiliar, they are much more comfortable living in the village among the people they know and trust. Afterward, while changing her clothes, Safiria reflects on her circumstances and admits to herself that it feels somewhat lonely. She does not want to be separated from her family. Her mother does not wish to be apart from her either. Likewise, her older brother has no desire to be separated from her. After spending time thinking about the situation and struggling with the inconvenience of it all, she eventually arrives at a simple conclusion. Wouldn't everything be solved if she simply commuted back and forth at extreme speed? Fortunately, because of her position as the Magic Chief of Staff, she possesses authorization to enter the forbidden section of the library. Every day, she immerses herself in countless books concerning magicians and magic, tirelessly advancing her magical research. Because she has successfully developed a method of high-speed travel, she can reach the village in only half an hour. She spends time there eating lunch, chatting with her family and the villagers, and maintaining her relationships with everyone while still fulfilling her official duties. Once her visit is over, she strengthens the defensive measures surrounding the village. Afterward, she begins her return journey to the capital, patrolling the surrounding region along the way. This routine gradually becomes her daily schedule. As one might expect, continuously using magic for an entire hour without interruption places an enormous burden on the body. Consequently, as soon as she returns home each day, she immediately takes a short nap to recover her strength. According to what she has heard, if an ordinary magician attempted to replicate what she does, they would likely collapse and die within 10 minutes of departing from the castle. The consumption of magical power involved is apparently that extreme. Eventually, Safiria awakens from one of her naps. Narguria notices her movement and asks whether she is awake. Safiria greets Narguria with a cheerful good morning before asking whether something has happened. Narguria informs her that a messenger has just arrived from the palace. The message reports that an emergency summons has been issued for the Council of Senior Staff at the Central Command. As the Magic Chief of Staff, Safiria has been ordered to attend immediately. The scene then shifts to the Central Command within Violin Castle, where the Council of Senior Staff has already assembled. Safiria arrives and promptly apologizes for her delay. The commander responds by apologizing for calling her in on such short notice. Afterward, he addresses everyone present and instructs them to take their seats. Given the urgency of the circumstances, he explains that he will proceed directly to the matter at hand. A large force of demi-humans is currently advancing toward the imperial capital. The military is already preparing and discussing all possible countermeasures. The situation is severe. The imperial capital itself is facing an imminent threat, and for the first time since assuming her position, the Magic Chief of Staff, Safiria, is about to take an active role in the unfolding conflict. Within the Imperial Army, a unit known as the Combatant Class is used to measure the combat capabilities of monsters. This unit represents the number of fully trained and battle-hardened knights or soldiers required to defeat a single monster. For example, a lone soldier is considered evenly matched against a slime, making a slime a 1 combatant class monster. The combat capability of a typical beastman is estimated at 5 combatant classes. Based on that standard, a force of 100 beastmen would theoretically require approximately 500 soldiers to engage them successfully. The assessment is acknowledged as correct, but only under ideal circumstances, conditions that include clear visibility, favorable terrain, and an average specimen of the beastman race. However, military planners recognize that battlefields are rarely ideal. When visibility is poor, terrain is difficult, and other unfavorable factors are present, the estimated threat level can increase to as much as 3 times the original evaluation. Under such circumstances, a single beastman may be considered equivalent to 15 combatant classes. As a result, 100 beastmen could potentially require a force of 1,500 soldiers to handle effectively. The situation becomes even more complicated, because the Empire's objective is not merely to repel the enemy. The goal is to completely annihilate the invading force, while ensuring that the imperial capital suffers no damage whatsoever. Achieving such a result would require deploying several times more troops than the basic estimate suggests. The scale of the discussion makes Safiria realize that the coming battle may involve thousands of soldiers. Unfortunately, given the Empire's current condition, assembling and deploying a large-scale subjugation force is not feasible. Because of this limitation, military strategists conclude that the beastmen must be intercepted before they can reach the capital. The imperial city is protected by a massive defensive wall, but that protection is not absolute. Beastmen possess physical abilities far beyond those of ordinary humans, and lightweight individuals among them could potentially leap over the wall. Should they succeed in infiltrating the urban districts, the resulting destruction would be catastrophic. Preventing such an invasion becomes an absolute priority. The possibility of stationing troops directly on top of the wall is considered, but significant drawbacks quickly become apparent. Although beastmen would be able to descend from the wall by jumping, human soldiers would require considerably more time to climb down and reposition themselves. As a result, concentrating troops atop the walls could ultimately place the defenders at a disadvantage, rather than strengthening their defenses. Another concern emerges regarding the possibility of a surprise attack. Beastmen possess speed that ordinary humans simply cannot match. If the Imperial Army fails to seize the initiative, it risks fighting from a position of disadvantage from the very beginning of the engagement. Attention then turns toward the possibility of intercepting the enemy in the open fields before they reach the walls. Since cavalry is considered ineffective against beastmen, commanders instead contemplate deploying archers and sorcerers along the walls to provide supporting fire, while infantry engages the enemy outside the city. Even then, disagreements arise regarding the estimated threat level. Some believe that, when facing beastmen in an open field with proper support, military engineers would likely evaluate them at approximately 7 combatant classes. This assessment immediately draws criticism from others involved in the discussion. Several officers consider such an estimate absurdly low. Some argue that the figure should be closer to 2 combatant classes, while others insist that even 10 combatant classes would be a more realistic assessment. The debate grows increasingly heated as participants emphasize the importance of avoiding complacency. Many believe that underestimating the enemy could have disastrous consequences. If the defenders become careless and the capital sustains even minor damage, the repercussions could be severe enough to threaten the stability of the entire nation. For that reason, the most cautious voices argue that every beastman should be treated as a 15 combatant class threat regardless of the circumstances. According to reports received from surrounding villages, beastmen typically move in groups of approximately 30 individuals. This intelligence further reinforces the urgency of developing an effective strategy before the enemy reaches the vicinity of the imperial capital. If the beastmen are evaluated at 10 combatant classes each, then a force of approximately 300 soldiers would be sufficient to repel a group of 30. However, if it is assumed that different beastmen groups are attacking multiple villages simultaneously, then the required response would vary depending on the composition and type of each group. Taking these factors into consideration, the commander formulates a defensive strategy. He decides that 300 soldiers will be deployed in each of the 4 cardinal directions surrounding the imperial capital. Separate day and night shifts will be maintained, bringing the total number of deployed personnel to approximately 2,400 soldiers. Patrol units will continuously monitor each sector. Whenever a beastman group is detected, nearby forces will immediately move to support the area, surround the enemy, and eliminate them before they can advance further. As the discussion continues, another officer recalls a disturbing rumor. According to certain reports, there are rare beastmen born with extraordinary power, individuals whose combat capability exceeds 100 combatant classes. The possibility raises concern. If such a monster were to appear, there is uncertainty regarding whether the Imperial Army would be capable of dealing with it at all. The commander quickly reassures everyone. He states that if they are speaking of an anomaly possessing immense strength, then the Empire is not without its own extraordinary asset. They have Lady Riverscale on their side. At those words, the attention of everyone in the room shifts towards Safiria, and the gathered officers look to her as though seeking confirmation of the commander's confidence. While the discussion continues around her, Safiria finds herself preoccupied by a different question altogether. Rather than focusing on military calculations, she wonders why the beastmen are attacking the imperial capital in the first place. The motives behind the attacks remain unclear. As various officers begin presenting their own theories and explanations, the meeting gradually draws toward its conclusion. Safiria eventually rises from her chair and prepares to leave. As she does, several individuals thank her for her hard work and participation in the discussion. In return, she expresses her gratitude to the deputy commander, modestly remarking that she does not believe she contributed very much. She admits that she still lacks sufficient knowledge regarding monsters, military logistics, and the mobilization of armies. The deputy commander immediately disagrees with her assessment. In his view, every person present contributes something valuable. He explains that many of the officers have a tendency to become overly passionate during strategic debates, causing them to lose sight of the broader situation. Throughout the meeting, however, Cypheria's observations at several critical moments helped redirect the discussion toward the correct path. Her comments may have been brief, but they proved surprisingly important. After hearing his explanation, Cypheria calls out to the deputy commander and asks whether she may examine the map from earlier once again. Sometime later, she is found inside the library, carefully studying the map in greater detail. Beside her stands Narguria, who remarks that beastmen are truly formidable opponents. Together they examine the locations that have already suffered attacks. Several damaged settlements are marked across the map. Among them is Narguria's own village. From the pattern of the attacks, it certainly appears as though the beastmen are steadily advancing toward the imperial capital. At first glance, it does not seem as though their route will take them directly through Cypheria's village. Even so, Cypheria finds herself unable to relax. If the beastmen's true objective is not the capital itself, then there would be nothing strange about them changing direction and targeting the village instead. The possibility cannot be ignored. Narguria points out that the capital is planning to dispatch troops to deal with the threat regardless. Cypheria acknowledges the point but questions how many soldiers can realistically be sent. Scouts are scheduled to be deployed throughout every region in order to locate the beastmen groups. However, even after their location is identified and the appropriate response force is selected, several days would still be required for a military unit capable of confronting beastmen to arrive at the designated area. That delay troubles her greatly. If the beastmen reach the village before the army does, the consequences could be disastrous. As she considers the situation, another thought occurs to her. Unlike ordinary soldiers, she herself possesses the ability to reach the village almost instantly. Sensing the direction of her thoughts, Narguria asks whether she is planning to take action personally. Cypheria answers without hesitation. She intends to investigate the situation herself. According to the strategy currently being prepared by Central Command, the imperial capital will be fortified, and the military will remain on the defensive. Once official orders are issued and the operation begins, even she will no longer be free to leave the capital whenever she wishes. Because of that, she decides that she cannot afford to wait. Before the final order is given and the defensive plan is fully implemented, she intends to make the first move herself. Narguria immediately rises to her feet, insisting that no one can predict what might happen during a confrontation with the beastmen. Because of that uncertainty, she earnestly asks to accompany Cypheria. Cypheria readily agrees, explaining that this time she will need Narguria's assistance as well. Hearing those words, Narguria tightly embraces her and assures her that there is no need for concern. She confidently declares that anyone foolish enough to stand against them will be reduced to nothing more than rust upon her sword. Soon afterward, the two of them stand atop the castle, preparing for their journey. Their destination is Selfview Village. Cypheria activates Skywalk, and before long they are soaring through the air. While Cypheria remains completely calm, Narguria begins crying out in panic as the ground grows increasingly distant beneath them. Cypheria tells her to stop panicking, warning that excessive movement could cause them to lose their balance. However, Narguria insists that the entire situation is far too extreme. She anxiously points out that a fall from such a height would surely result in death. Cypheria cannot help questioning what exactly Narguria means by that, as though the possibility barely concerns her. To reassure her companion, she explains that she has already implemented several improvements specifically designed to prevent such accidents. According to Cypheria, the principle is quite simple. A loop statement continues executing statement B for as long as conditional statement A remains true. In other words, it functions as a classic while loop. Because of this mechanism, the wind spell can repeatedly reactivate itself over and over again without interruption, allowing them to remain airborne indefinitely. In addition to that, she has also incorporated an if statement as a safety measure. Should an accident occur, merely touching her pinky finger will automatically trigger a pre-installed air cushion. In her opinion, the entire system is completely fail-proof. Unfortunately, reality seems determined to challenge that claim. Moments later, both of them end up falling. After they land, Cytherea immediately checks on her companion and asks whether she is all right. Narguria confirms that she is unharmed. Despite the unexpected mishap, it appears that they have successfully arrived at their destination. When they reach the village, they discover that all of the villagers have gathered together nearby. While Narguria is still struggling to recover from the journey, Cytherea steps forward without hesitation and introduces both of them. She identifies herself as Cytherea and introduces Narguria as her companion, explaining that they have come from the imperial capital. The reaction is immediate. The villagers recognize her at once. Curious gazes gather from every direction as the people examine her closely. Cytherea cannot help thinking that being infamous is perhaps better than being completely unknown. Ironically, the notoriety she has accumulated has granted her a certain level of credibility. Because of that reputation, she is able to exchange information regarding the roaming beastman group with the village chief. Fortunately, the news she receives is encouraging. At least for the time being, the area surrounding Selfu village remains safe from attack. As she continues moving through the village, someone suddenly calls out to her. The speaker appears interested in her reputation and remarks that she is supposedly an extraordinarily powerful sorcerer. Cytherea modestly denies such praise, but the individual seems unconvinced. He points out that everyone in the village appears afraid of her, which, in his eyes, is quite impressive considering her small stature. He then admits that he admires strong people, and begins wondering aloud who would be stronger between himself and the famous sorcerer standing before him. Just as he reaches out towards Cytherea, Narguria reacts instantly. She pulls Cytherea behind her and firmly prevents the stranger from touching her. At that moment, both women immediately realize something unusual. The individual standing before them is not human. The stranger is visibly surprised that his disguise has been discovered, and questions how they managed to identify him so quickly. Cytherea and Narguria explain that although he has done an admirable job blending into the village population, his movements are simply too perfect for an ordinary village child. The precision of his actions betrays his true nature. The demi-human acknowledges their observation. He admits that such a disguise may not be sufficient to deceive individuals who have come from the imperial capital. Rather than causing a scene in front of the villagers, he suggests relocating somewhere more private. Accepting the proposal, Cytherea and Narguria follow him away from the village. Eventually, the stranger decides that they have gone far enough and indicates that the location is suitable for a discussion. The instant they stop, Narguria draws her sword without hesitation. Seeing the blade, the demi-human hurriedly attempts to calm the situation. He points out that the people they are actually pursuing are the beastmen responsible for attacking the villages. His statement immediately catches Cytherea's attention. She wonders whether he is implying that he has no connection to those beastmen at all. The demi-human answers honestly. He admits that he cannot claim to be entirely unrelated. Introducing himself, he reveals that his name is Regi of the Swift Gale. He explains that he secretly left his own village in pursuit of a particular objective. According to him, the beastman group that Cytherea and Narguria have been tracking is most likely pursuing him specifically. Having revealed that much, Regi shifts the conversation in a new direction. With a composed expression, he proposes that the three of them make a small deal. Cytherea questions Regi about the beastman who attacked the village, asking where he had intended to go after leaving his home. Regi answers that his destination is the imperial capital. Cytherea then asks why he came to this particular village instead. Regi immediately questions whether she is trying to doubt his story. He explains that he does not even realize he is being hunted until just now. After leaving his village, he decides to head toward the imperial capital, but he knows neither the direction nor the distance. When he arrives at this village, he intends to ask someone for directions. However, by the time he reaches it, night has already fallen. The villagers invite him to share a meal and spend the night there. After lying down to rest, he finds himself thinking that the place is not half bad. As Cytherea listens, she concludes that the way he ends up in this village makes sense. She then asks why he plans to travel to the capital in the first place. Regi states that he has his own reasons. However, he becomes slightly reluctant before admitting that there is someone he wants to meet there. The others immediately wonder whether it is related to romance, but he quickly denies the implication. Regardless, he says that he intends to travel alone from the very beginning. His expression darkens as he explains that the beastmen from his village following him is bad news. At this very moment, just like Cytherea and her companions, the Imperial Army is probably searching for them as well. If things continue this way, the beastmen may end up being killed. That outcome would not sit well with him at all. Only then does he arrive at what he considers the important part of the discussion. He reveals that he wants to drive them back without killing them, and for that, he needs Cytherea and the others to help him. Since the beastmen have likely followed his scent to this village, dealing with them here would save everyone a great deal of trouble. Cytherea immediately agrees. Her quick acceptance leaves Rigi visibly shocked. Narguria, however, immediately voices her concern. She points out that the whole situation could easily be a trap. Cytherea asks what she means by that. Narguria explains that Rigi could simply be planning to lead them into a beastman ambush, where they would be overwhelmed by superior numbers. Cytherea admits that such a possibility certainly exists. However, she also points out that if they manage to defeat all the enemies at once, resolving the situation would become much faster. Rigi acknowledges that her reasoning may be true, but he questions whether they even stand a chance of winning. Cytherea calmly replies that it depends on the number of opponents they are facing. Rigi appears unimpressed by the answer. He questions how she can speak so casually when she does not even seem confident in herself, especially considering that she is supposed to be the famous sorcerer. Cytherea honestly admits that she simply does not know much about beastmen. Rigi then reveals that their number is 30 at most. Hearing that figure, Cytherea silently notes that the report she receives earlier is accurate. Rigi states that he dislikes playing games and asks whether there is anything else she wants to know. Cytherea replies that she has one final question. She points out that if his story is true, then capturing him and handing him over to the beastmen should cause them to return to their village immediately. The suggestion makes Rigi raise his voice in alarm, demanding to know whether she is trying to start a fight. A moment later, however, he lets out a snicker. He casually remarks that she is free to try capturing him if she wants, but accomplishing that task will be difficult. Cytherea asks why. Rigi proudly declares that he is the fastest individual in his village. To him, it would simply become a game of tag. Confidently, he challenges Cytherea to try catching him if she can. Cytherea responds without hesitation. She immediately activates Sleeping Coffin. Rigi notices the ground beneath him suddenly bulging upward. In an instant, walls of earth rise around him. By amplifying the soil vertically and activating the spell 4 separate times at carefully chosen angles, Cytherea creates an enclosed earth wall prison around him. Realizing what has happened, Rigi declares that if that is all there is to it, he will simply break through. However, before he can take any action, Cytherea calmly approaches and drops a massive block directly onto him. Rigi's outraged shout echoes from within the enclosure as he protests that such a method is unfair. He demands to know what that thing even is, and complains that if this is how she intends to catch him, then the entire challenge is completely unreasonable. Cytherea's method leaves Rigi thoroughly dissatisfied. From beneath the heavy block restraining him, he protests that she should at least try to catch him fairly. Cytherea calmly tells him to be patient. After all, she has already said that she will help him, has she not? If he suddenly decides to run away in the meantime, dealing with him later would become an unnecessary nuisance. Rigi narrows his eyes and questions whether she truly intends to help him at all. To be honest, Cytherea admits that the entire situation could still be a trap. Agreeing to assist him is a deal that comes with possible drawbacks and risks. However, there is something that interests her even more than those concerns. She is interested in him. Beastmen, magical beasts. What exactly are they? Opportunities to stand this close to a magical creature and converse with one directly are incredibly rare. The chance to learn more about their nature is simply too valuable to ignore. Rigi finds her answer amusing. He remarks that, aside from the person he originally intends to meet, there seem to be plenty of interesting humans in the outside world as well. Even so, he admits that human magic is certainly useful. This prompts Cytherea to ask another question. Since magical beasts are supposedly adept at using magic, she wonders what kind of spells they normally use. Rigi explains that there is nothing particularly special about it. The main difference is that magical beasts do not use chance the way humans do. Their abilities are something they are born with. Because of that, he cannot really distinguish between different categories of magic the way humans do. To him, what humans call magic is simply something that exists naturally. They do not understand it through classifications in the first place. His explanation causes Cytherea to fall into thought. Born with it. To her, it sounds similar to a natural constitution. For example, a fire-breathing dragon can supposedly breathe fire because there is an organ inside its body that allows it to do so. or at least that is the prevailing theory among humans. If magical beasts possess abilities from birth, then it makes sense that they can construct spells instinctively without consciously thinking about the process. The truth is that magical creatures remain largely unknown to humanity. After pondering the subject for a moment, Safiria asks whether he has any ideas about how to drive the beastmen from his village away without killing them. Rigi confidently states that he does. His plan is to scare them off by hitting them on the head. The simplicity of the answer immediately causes confusion, and the others question what exactly he means by that. Rigi proceeds to explain. Magical beasts, and beastmen in particular, place immense value on strength. In that regard, they are not entirely different from humans. Among beastmen, the weak possess no authority over the strong. Power, status, and even beauty are all considered measures of strength. Furthermore, yielding to the commands of the strong is deeply ingrained in their instincts. That is the foundation upon which beastman society operates. According to him, the weak are simply eaten by the strong. Because of that, he believes there is a straightforward solution. Safiria is already famous. She is known throughout the land as the executioner of hell. All she needs to do is demonstrate overwhelming power. If she proves her strength beyond doubt, the beastmen will naturally listen to her and return to their village. The explanation earns an immediate reaction from Narguria. She sharply tells Rigi not to act so familiar and stop trying to get close to Safiria. Ignoring the tension, Safiria turns her attention to the upcoming task. She casually announces that she will simply fly into the sky and frighten the beastmen with her magic. She intends to scar their hearts so thoroughly that they will never even consider returning again. With her plan decided, she departs. Rigi quickly follows after her, reminding her that she seems to have misunderstood one important detail. She is not allowed to kill them. After recovering their strength in the village and making the necessary preparations, the group becomes fully ready for what promises to be the beginning of an epic confrontation. Before long, they spot movement in the distance. The beastmen have arrived. At last, both sides stand face to face. The pursuing beastmen immediately notice Rigi among the group. Their eyes lock onto him, and voices rise from their ranks as they declare that they have finally found him. The group of beastmen finally catches up to Rigi, and all of them are visibly excited by the fact that they have managed to find him. However, their enthusiasm quickly shifts into confusion when one of them notices the woman standing beside him and the small child accompanying her. The beastman immediately questions the identity of the woman and wonders whose child the baby could possibly be. His remark causes the entire group to become puzzled. At the same time, Narguria finds herself oddly pleased by their assumption and privately wonders whether they truly believe that Safiria is her daughter. Safiria, meanwhile, silently begs her not to become flattered by such an absurd misunderstanding. The lion beastman then directs his attention toward Rigi and complains that he cannot simply disappear without warning. From the beastman's perspective, Rigi has irresponsibly abandoned them merely to meet with a human. The accusation carries a tone of genuine frustration. Rigi, however, remains completely unfazed. He dismisses the complaint as nothing more than an annoyance and makes it clear that he lives his life according to his own desires. In his view, the concept of responsibility holds no meaning. Among the demon race, only one principle exists: the strong dominate the weak. That alone is the law by which they live. The surrounding beastmen immediately react with exaggerated disapproval, loudly declaring how terrible and awful such an attitude is. Their complaints only irritate Rigi further, prompting him to snap at them and demand that they stop talking. Observing the exchange, Safiria slowly raises a hand and asks everyone to wait for a moment. The situation unfolding before her is completely different from what she had expected when she came here. Beside her, Narguria watches the argument and begins to wonder if this entire confrontation might somehow be a bizarre lovers' quarrel. Sensing that matters are spiraling out of control, Rigi immediately turns towards Safiria and urges her to proceed with the plan they had discussed. According to him, the situation is rapidly slipping beyond control, and delaying any longer would only make things worse. Stepping forward, Safiria finally addresses the gathered beastmen. She asks whether they are responsible for attacking the nearby human village. The moment the beastmen hear the question, astonishment spreads throughout the group. They stare at her in disbelief. Not only is she a human child, but she is also speaking fluently and carrying herself with a level of composure far beyond what anyone would expect from a baby. The lion beastman answers without hesitation. He openly admits that they are indeed responsible. From his perspective, They were merely obtaining food. Between pursuing Reggie and dealing with their own needs, they do not have the luxury of leisurely hunting whenever they please. Because of that, they chose to acquire food from the human settlement instead. Safiria then asks whether that is truly the reason they attacked the villagers. The lion beastman laughs at the question, as though the answer is obvious. To him, a reason is hardly necessary. Taking from the weak is simply the natural order of the world. The strong seize what they desire, while the weak lose what they cannot protect. In his eyes, that is the most normal thing imaginable. Hearing those words, Safiria begins to understand the values that govern Beastman society. Their worldview revolves entirely around strength. Morality, justice, and compassion carry little weight compared to power. After silently considering his answer, she calmly states that if taking from the weak is truly natural, then she supposes that such logic should apply universally. The beastmen look at her in confusion, uncertain of what she means. At that moment, Safiria unleashes the power of the wind. The air around her begins to stir and tremble under her control. Maintaining a calm expression, she applies the beastmen's own logic back onto them. If it is natural for the strong to take from the weak, then it should also be perfectly natural for her to take their lives. The atmosphere instantly changes as the overwhelming force of her wind magic gathers around her, and the beastmen are confronted with the terrifying realization that the seemingly harmless human baby standing before them may be far stronger than any of them had imagined. The beastmen immediately begin to tremble in fear. The pressure radiating from Safiria's magic is so overwhelming that several of them can hardly believe what they are witnessing. Their minds race with disbelief as they wonder how a mere baby could possibly cast a spell of such incredible power. Safiria calmly informs them that the spell she has just used is not a powerful spell at all. In fact, according to her standards, it is nothing more than a weak spell. Her statement only deepens their terror. Finally, one of the beastmen arrives at a horrifying conclusion. He wonders whether this human child could actually be the legendary hero. The realization sends panic through the entire group. They immediately understand how disastrous the situation is. Every instinct tells them that they need to flee as quickly as possible. To the demon races, the title of hero carries a meaning very similar to the title of demon king among humans. It represents an existence standing at the pinnacle of power, an individual capable of bringing destruction upon entire nations. Safiria then activates her closed future. With complete confidence, she declares that even though they have only now realized the truth, it is already too late. According to her prediction, this place will become their grave. The beastmen become even more terrified. Nearby, Reggie observes the phenomenon with interest. He wonders whether this is a stronger version of the spell Safiria used earlier when she captured him. Safiria then presents the beastmen with a final choice. If they do not wish to die, they must immediately return to their village and swear never to set foot within human territory again. Faced with an opponent they believe to be the hero herself, the beastmen have no alternatives left. One after another, they drop to their knees. The mission is a complete success. Narguria enthusiastically applauds the outcome and praises Safiria, remarking that such a result is exactly what she would expect from her. However, once the celebration subsides, Safiria suddenly notices something strange. Reggie is nowhere to be seen. Wondering where he has gone, she begins searching for him, only to discover that he is already standing directly in front of them. He asks whether they were not planning to send those beastmen away. Reggie casually replies that he certainly was. However, at the moment, something else has captured his interest far more. Rather than dealing with the beastmen, he has become interested in fighting the hero. His declaration leaves Safiria completely bewildered. She cannot understand what is happening. Had the display of power she used somehow excited him instead of intimidating him? Nothing about his reaction makes sense. Attempting to redirect him, she reminds him that he was supposed to be traveling to the royal capital to meet someone. Reggie dismisses the concern without hesitation. According to him, there is no problem. If he defeats the hero, the person he intends to meet will inevitably come to him instead. Therefore, there is no need for him to travel anywhere. After saying that, he tells Safiria to prepare herself. He warns her that he exists on an entirely different level compared to the others. Meanwhile, the surrounding beastmen immediately begin cheering. They enthusiastically support Reggie and look forward to watching the battle. Reggie then instructs everyone else to stay out of his way because he intends to use his true power. At the same time, Safiria reassures Narguria that everything will be fine and asks her to stand back. Although Narguria obeys, she cannot help wondering where Reggie's confidence originates. As far as she knows, beastmen possess extraordinary physical abilities, but that alone should not allow them to challenge someone capable of using powerful magic. If he cannot use magic, then what exactly is he relying on? As though reading their thoughts, Reggie reveals something he had neglected to mention. He explains that members of the demonic race are born with unique powers. Whether those powers qualify as what humans call magic is difficult to say. However, on extremely rare occasions, an incarnation blessed by an outer deity is born among them. Those individuals possess abilities that unquestionably qualify as true magic. Hearing this explanation, Safiria recalls various stories she has heard before. Legends occasionally speak of beastmen born with overwhelming talents that far exceed those of ordinary members of their race. Could Reggie be one of those rare individuals? Before she can finish processing the thought, the answer presents itself. In an instant, Reggie awakens his power. Safiria suddenly notices that he has disappeared. The next moment, he appears directly in front of her. The speed is so absurd that she cannot react. A powerful blow crashes into her, launching her backward. The impact is devastating enough to make her lose consciousness momentarily. Before she can properly recover, Reggie vanishes once again. He reappears immediately afterward and drives another strike into her stomach. The force of the attack sends her crashing to the ground. Watching the scene unfold, Narguria finally reaches her limit. Unable to tolerate seeing Safiria attacked any longer, she charges toward Reggie with her sword. However, the instant she moves, she realizes something is wrong. Reggie has disappeared again. Alarmed, she quickly turns around. There, standing directly behind her, is Reggie. He casually mocks her, remarking that she is far too slow. He reminds them that he already explained this earlier. Among all beastmen, he is by far the fastest. The surrounding beastmen erupt into even louder cheers. They excitedly celebrate his performance, shouting praises and calling out his name. To them, their strongest warrior is proving exactly why he deserves such admiration. Meanwhile, the battle takes a dangerous turn. Safiria has already witnessed firsthand the terrifying speed that Reggie possesses. His movements resemble a violent gale that cannot be tracked by ordinary eyes. As she struggles to recover from the relentless assault, one question dominates her thoughts. How is she supposed to counter a speed as overwhelming as swift gale? Reggie questions whether she truly intends to continue fighting. His eyes fall upon the sword she draws, prompting him to remark that she had been carrying another sword all along. However, he cannot understand what she expects to accomplish with such a dull blade. In his view, there is no way she could possibly defeat him using a sword that lacks a proper edge. Before the battle reaches this point, an earlier scene comes to mind. Safiria approaches Narguria and asks for her opinion regarding her new sword. Upon examining it, Narguria notices that it possesses no sharp edge whatsoever. Rather than resembling a proper sword, it appears closer to a blunt weapon. The unusual design makes Safiria wonder whether Rumi Fort had played some sort of joke on them. She even briefly considers whether the weapon possesses some hidden ability, such as firing lasers. Narguria carefully handles the sword and remarks that it feels extraordinarily light. The sensation is unlike anything she has experienced before. Safiria then suggests that she test the weapon by cutting something with it. Following the suggestion, Narguria swings the sword at a nearby group of trees. To her astonishment, a single strike is enough to bring down every tree before her. The experience leaves a deep impression on her. The instant she begins her swing, the sword suddenly becomes so heavy that she feels as though her arms might be torn from their sockets. Yet the moment the swing concludes, the weapon immediately returns to feeling as light as a feather. Observing this strange phenomenon, Safiria begins to formulate a theory. She suspects that the sword's mass changes according to the speed at which it is moving. The sword's creator, Lady Yujinan, is renowned throughout the land. Her title, the Tempered, reflects her reputation for strengthening everything associated with her through magic. From her weapons and armor, to even her own body, every aspect of her existence has been magically tempered and reinforced. If this sword has likewise been enhanced through her extraordinary magic, then it should possess enough power to challenge even the most formidable monsters. Safiria further analyzes the weapon's properties. Assuming that a magical enhancement has been embedded within the sword that directly increases its mass in proportion to its speed, then the weapon operates according to a fascinating principle. The kinetic energy generated by a sword swing is proportional to the sword's mass multiplied by the square of its velocity. Consequently, the faster the blade moves, the more dramatically its kinetic energy increases. Every strike becomes exponentially more devastating as its speed rises. Despite this overwhelming power, the sword itself possesses a blunt edge. As a result, its ability to inflict conventional life-threatening cuts is relatively low. Instead, the weapon specializes in delivering crushing impacts. A skilled wielder capable of precisely controlling the speed of each swing can use it to unleash devastating blows against powerful opponents while simultaneously reducing the force against weaker adversaries. Such a weapon is perfectly suited for someone like Narguria, whose compassionate nature often prevents her from causing unnecessary harm. In Saphiria's eyes, it is truly a masterpiece. She even comments that it is a beautiful sword. The memory fades, and the focus returns to the present battle. Narguria immediately launches an attack using her swift and fierce technique, Flame Edge. The strike forces Reggie backward. Shock spreads across his face as he struggles to comprehend what has just happened. The attack barely grazes him, yet the impact feels as though he has been struck directly by a massive log. The two opponents quickly regain their footing and once again stand facing one another. Narguria presses forward with another attack, while Reggie simultaneously moves to counter her. Assessing the situation, Reggie concludes that although she managed to surprise him earlier, she ultimately cannot keep pace with his movements. Around them, the observing beastmen reach similar conclusions. They point out that Reggie, while awakened, is capable of moving at speeds 3 times greater than those of an ordinary beastman. Given such an overwhelming advantage, they believe the outcome of the battle has been obvious from the very beginning. In their eyes, no amount of desperate sword swinging can possibly bridge the gap between them. Acting on that confidence, Reggie charges forward once more and strikes her down. However, Narguria arrives at a completely different assessment of the battle. From her perspective, the same criticism applies equally to him. She recognizes that he is refusing to fully commit to his attacks. Despite his speed advantage, he remains wary of the tremendous power contained within every one of her swings. The threat posed by her sword forces him to hesitate, preventing him from attacking with complete confidence and leaving him constantly on guard against the devastating force hidden behind each strike. If Reggie can only land such light attacks, then he realizes that he has no chance of defeating Narguria. The thought causes irritation to flash across his face, and his expression twitches with frustration. Meanwhile, another beastman observes that Narguria has truly managed to corner him. From their perspective, this battle is no longer one that can end cleanly for either side. Both combatants have already demonstrated enough strength to make the outcome costly regardless of who emerges victorious. At that very moment, a startled voice rings out across the battlefield. Someone notices that the baby has gotten back up. Reggie's attention immediately shifts towards Saphiria. As a beastman with the instincts and perception of a fighter, he recalls that something had felt strange when he struck her earlier. The sensation had been subtle, but now he finally understands that his attack had not connected in the way he expected. Just before Reggie had punched her, Saphiria had quietly pressed together the pinky finger and thumb of her right hand. Had she received those attacks directly without any protection, the force behind them would have been catastrophic. The impact would have crushed her fragile body and squeezed her internal organs apart. However, the moment she fulfilled the conditions of a specific magical trigger, a defensive spell known as Safety Bubble automatically activated around her. It is a spell she originally created as a precautionary measure while experimenting with flight magic. Since moving at high speeds carried significant risks, she designed a defensive mechanism that would protect her from sudden impacts and accidents. Fortunately, she had chosen to keep the spell active throughout the battle just in case something unexpected occurred. That decision now proves to have been an excellent one. As she rises back to her feet, she silently thanks Narguria. The time her older companion bought for her during the fight has allowed her to carefully analyze Reggie's abilities. More importantly, it has given her enough information to finally determine a method of defeating him. Reggie stares at her in disbelief. He demands to know what exactly she is trying to accomplish. The sight of her standing unharmed after taking his attack infuriates him. He insists that she should already know that he held back when he struck her earlier. In his view, she should understand perfectly well that he was not fighting with his full strength. Saphiria, however, remains completely unfazed. Instead of showing fear, she calmly encourages him to attack her with everything he has. She tells him that next time he should stop holding back. If he wishes, he can even strike her with his full power. Those words instantly ignite his anger. To Reggie, it sounds as though she is mocking him. He declares that she must truly want to be hit again. His frustration quickly transforms into rage, and he swears that he will make her regret reducing him to tears earlier. Saphiria's expression hardens in response. From her perspective, Reggie is the one who spent the entire battle beating up her precious big sister. Because of that, she feels she has every right to be angry. The atmosphere around them immediately becomes tense. Without another moment of hesitation, the two charge toward one another and resume their battle. This time, however, Saphiria gains the initiative from the very beginning. She rushes forward and begins relentlessly attacking Reggie. Blow after blow lands before he can properly react. The momentum of the fight shifts completely in her favor, and before long, Reggie is sent crashing to the ground. Shock spreads throughout the gathered beastmen. They can scarcely believe what they have just witnessed. Reggie the warrior, who is famous for his incredible speed, has actually lost. Several beastmen stare blankly at the scene, struggling to process it. They are certain that they just watched Reggie get thoroughly beaten. In fact, beaten hardly seems like the right word. It looks more as though he had been kicked around helplessly throughout the exchange. Confusion quickly follows the shock. None of them can understand what just happened. They know how fast Reggie is. They know how powerful his awakened state makes him. Yet somehow, this tiny child has completely overwhelmed him. The answer lies in the method Saphiria devised after observing him. Witnessing Reggie's awakened speed firsthand had given her inspiration. His movements had resembled the manifestation of the legendary swift gale itself. By carefully analyzing the unique magical principles behind those movements, she developed a countermeasure of her own. The spell consumes a considerable amount of magical power, but its underlying formula is surprisingly simple. Whenever the index finger and thumb of her right hand are pressed together, the distance she travels within a fixed period of time becomes multiplied 12-fold. The result is an extraordinary burst of speed. As the beastmen are still struggling to comprehend the situation, their anger begins to rise. Many of them become furious at the sight of Reggie being defeated. Outraged by what Saphiria has done, they rush forward in an attempt to attack her. However, the outcome is immediate and one-sided. Saphiria moves through them effortlessly. One beastman after another is struck down before they can even properly react. Every attack directed toward her misses completely, while her own blows land with perfect accuracy. A female beastman watches the spectacle unfold with astonishment. She realizes that Saphiria is simultaneously fighting multiple opponents by herself. Even more shocking is the way she moves. At first glance, her movements resemble Reggie's. Then the female beastman reaches an even more unbelievable conclusion. No, Saphiria is actually moving even faster than him. The battlefield quickly transforms into a blur of motion as beastmen are sent tumbling in every direction. None of them are capable of matching her speed. None of them can even keep track of her position for more than an instant. Eventually, Reggie manages to force himself back onto his feet. Despite his injuries, his pride refuses to allow him to remain down. He immediately orders the other beastmen not to interfere. According to him, he is supposed to be the fastest. This is a fight he must settle personally. Determined to reclaim his title, Reggie activates his awakening once again and launches himself towards Saphiria at maximum speed. Yet the moment he attacks, something feels terribly wrong. The world around him suddenly appears sluggish. To the spectators, Reggie still seems incredibly fast. To Saphiria, however, he appears dramatically slower than before. By manipulating her own movement calculations, she has effectively divided the relative difference in speed between them. Compared to her enhanced acceleration, Reggie's legendary swiftness now seems insignificant. The beastmen stare in disbelief. Some begin wondering whether Reggie has somehow become slower. Others simply cannot comprehend what their eyes are seeing. Meanwhile, Reggie continues desperately insisting that he is the fastest. Even as tears stream down his face, he stubbornly clings to that belief. But reality has already decided the outcome. Saphiria closes the distance in an instant. Before Reggie can react, she delivers her final blow. The strike lands decisively, bringing an end to the battle and conclusively proving who possesses the greater speed. Reggie, the warrior once known as the Swift Gale, is finally defeated. The beastmen can hardly comprehend what is happening. They wonder how it is even possible for a baby's punch to possess such overwhelming power. The kick she landed on them earlier had also felt impossibly heavy, far beyond what anyone would expect from a child. Riki, however, gradually comes to a realization. He concludes that the strength has nothing to do with her fists or legs themselves. A startling thought crosses his mind. Throughout the entire battle, she has merely been playing with him. While he had been fighting with everything he possessed, she had only been pretending to engage him seriously. Safiria is surprised that he manages to figure it out. To demonstrate the truth, she unleashes a technique known as the sparkling near-head blow. At first glance, it appears as though she is simply throwing a punch. In reality, however, her fist stops just before making contact with its target. The secret lies in a spell she activates by bringing her middle finger and thumb together. The spell increases the amount of air concentrated at the tip of her fist by 100 times. The spell itself is not particularly powerful. Nevertheless, when released at point-blank range, the compressed air strikes with tremendous force. Even individuals with bodies as sturdy as those of the Beastmen would find the impact extremely painful. With that final technique, she delivers the decisive blow. Rigi is sent crashing to the ground. As he lies there, the reality of his defeat begins to sink in. He snaps emotionally, unable to accept what has happened. He cannot believe that he has lost to someone other than the one person he has always acknowledged as superior. Other than Barbert, he never imagined anyone could defeat him. The frustration overwhelms him. He begins to cry. He admits his defeat and continues crying for a very, very long time. As this unfolds, Safiria becomes curious about the person he keeps mentioning. She learns that he is talking about Miss Rumaford, a magician with blonde hair. The moment she hears the name, she immediately recognizes it. After all, Miss Rumaford is the very person who gifted Big Sister her magic sword. The revelation surprises Rigi greatly. With the battle finally over, Safiria turns her attention to the gathered beastmen. She urges them to hurry and take their troublesome companion back home. Because of his actions, the capital has fallen into chaos due to fears of an impending beastman invasion. She herself must return and explain the situation to everyone. The beastmen are stunned by her decision. They cannot understand why she is allowing them to leave freely after everything that has happened. However, Safiria simply remains true to her word. She had promised that she would drive them away without killing anyone, and she has no intention of breaking that promise. The response from the beastmen is immediate. One after another, they begin blushing with admiration. They start referring to her as their master and praise the kindness she has shown them. They speak as though they have witnessed an extraordinary act of mercy.